national broadcasting company. Now in its 7th decade of bringing you baseball's memories. Baseball's milestones. Baseball's majesty. And baseball's magical moments. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week.
Today from Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium, it's the St. Louis Cardinals versus the Atlanta Braves. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Miller Brewing Company, sole sponsor of the U.S. Olympic Training Centers. By Toyota, looking out for you has made Toyota #1 in compact truck sales. By Ace Hardware Corporation, Ace is the place. And by AC Delco, the smart parts. It rained heavily this morning and early afternoon in Atlanta, but it stopped and apparently will be able to play on this July 4th. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas along with Tony Kubek. Today's pitching pairing, left-hander Zane Smith, 8-4 for the season for Atlanta, and Danny Cox, 7-3 for St. Louis, each with an ERA around 4 a game. The series opened here last night with the Cards pounding the Braves 9-1, another homer and 4 more RBIs for Jack Clark. He leads the majors in runs batted in, and he's tied with Dale Murphy of the Braves for the National League home run leadership at 24. Meanwhile, in Cincinnati, the Reds were beating the Mets, and so the Cardinals' lead is now 6 over New York in the National League East. The Braves have fallen to 4 under 500. That's the furthest beneath 500 they have been so far this year. Let's go down on the field. Here's Tony Kubek.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. Ozzie, the great shortstops, to name just a few, like Luis Aparicio, Mark Belanger, yourself, have something that nobody else does, a sixth sense. Explain this.
Well, in my explanation, what I've tried to do when we talk about this, and this is a question that, comes up occasionally, sixth sense is something I think that has to do with seeing a play before it happens, or playing the play over in your mind, anticipating what could possibly happen. Sometimes in situations I say to myself, like last night, for instance, what I said to myself, that if this ball is hit to my left, what am I going to do? If it's hit to my right, what am I going to do? Who's running on first? Who's at third? Who's at second? That's the way I would explain my sixth sense.
So when you, Dorothy, and Toto came back after the thundercloud, you didn't bring something special back with you?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I didn't bring anything special back. It was just that sixth sense that I had and have always had.
Now you've got the sixth sense with your bat. You've bulked up a little bit. You're hitting the ball harder. You're driving in runs, which has got to be kind of a pleasure for you this year.
Well, Tony, you know what? I've always taken a lot of pride in is driving in runs. I've never really hit for a high average, but for a number 8 hitter, I've always driven in over 50, 55 runs a year, and I'd taken a lot of pride in that, and this year was no different. I think the thing that's special about it is that I'm hitting in the number 2 spot.
Well, may the force stay with you, whatever that force is. Thank you, Ozzie. We'll be back to Atlanta in the starting lineup right after this.
Zane Smith takes his 8-4 record to the mound to face this lineup. Vince Coleman, whose 51 steals lead the majors. He swiped one last night. Ozzie Smith, the Wizard of Oz, as so aptly described by Tony Kubek in his pregame interview, will be at shortstop. Tommy Herr at second base. Jack Clark tied with Dale Murphy atop the National League with 24 homers. All the rest of the Cardinals combined have 25, so he has just about half of his team's total. And only 15 homers other than those hit by Jack Clark represented in today's St. Louis lineup. Willie McGee in center field hitting 5th. Terry Pendleton at third base. Jim Lindemann has just been reactivated. He's been on the disabled list twice this year, once with a hamstring pull, most recently with back spasms. And when they brought him back, they released the veteran outfielder Tito Landrum. Steve Lake is the catcher in place of Tony Pena, day game after a night game. And Danny Cox, with a record of 7-3, will pitch for St. Louis.
Chuck Tanner's Braves have been hit by injuries. Ken Griffey in left field playing with a slightly bad back. Deion James in center. Dale Murphy appears to be a little tired now. He's looking for the all-star break, but he'll be in it. But playing very well. A little bit of a slump in right. Nettles at third. They miss Obergfell both defensively and his on-base percentage. Andres Thomas, playing with a bad ankle, is short. Hubbard playing with 2 bad ankles at second base, having an outstanding year. Gerald Perry at first. Ozzie Virgil having a big home run year behind the plate. Catching the left-hander, Zane Smith. And Bob, some people feel if there's any way to hold the Cardinals down is to throw a left-hander out.
Well, you make the switch hitters turn around to the right side and have a little better chance to hold the speedsters at first base. Smith throws a slider and curve, but his best pitch is probably his sinking fastball. Their pitching coach, Bruce Dalcanton, says on a good day, 65-70% of the pitches Smith throws will be the fastball, and it's a good idea to keep the ball down in this ballpark. It always has been, and you throw in the suspicious, lively baseball of this season, an even better idea to keep it low in 87. Well, Coleman keeps it on the ground and sends the first pitch into center field for a hit.
And Zane Smith has been one of those left-handers very vulnerable to the stolen base. They worked all spring training with the entire staff, but now with so many balks being called, they're just running at liberty on Zane Smith and most of the pitchers. Zane Smith, the last time out, did not walk anybody in a complete game outing, and that is a secret for him. Keep the ball in the ballpark, make them put the ball in play.
Look at the RBI total for Ozzie without a home run. Coleman chased back. At his present pace, Ozzie would drive in better than 90 runs. And doing it without the long ball. And from the second spot in the order. Quick throw over there, and Vince dives back in. First base ump is Joe West. At second, Bob Engel. Dana DeMuth at third, and Randy Marsh works the plate.
New move, one that Rigetti used his first year so effectively. Step back off the plate and be quick over there. He's been caught 10 times.
Had him going back to the bag as he delivered to Ozzie.
Vince Coleman, an interesting theory down at first. He said he's about ready to send a letter with all the balks, most of them when he's on first base for this Cardinal team. A letter to say, Commissioner Ubroth, when there's a balk, I get no reward. Why shouldn't I get a stolen base? I might have had it if they hadn't balked. Interesting concept.
A disproportionate number of the total balks in the National League. I mean, something like 20% of all the balks called in the league have been called when Coleman has been on base.
That is a record pace, to say the least.
Here comes a 2-0 pitch to Ozzie. And a called strike. Zane Smith threw a shutout his last time out, went the distance at Candlestick on a 5-hitter. And as Tony said, didn't walk anybody. That's a big key. Last year he averaged about 5 walks per 9 innings. He's cut that in half on average so far this year.
Cardinals with a very high on-base average. They will make a pitcher work, and the reason they get a lot of walks, aside from taking pitches, they're taking to let the runners go. But that pitcher's attention is so divided. Throwing over, then they speed up their delivery and can't get the ball over the plate. They don't use their normal delivery to home plate.
Zane Smith has thrown toward Ozzie Smith 3 times and toward Vince Coleman 7. He works to the plate, and here's a drive to left that Griffey will have. And Vince Coleman returns to first.
Five switch hitters in the lineup today for Whitey Herzog. You get down in the lineup. That's why I think Whitey, if he senses a vulnerability, he wants that right-handed power bat of Lindemann in the lineup, who had the great spring. Down in the rehab, as you said, with the bad back, bad hamstrings.
That 1 home run for Tom Herr this year, a game-winning grand slam off Jesse Orosco of the Mets. Cards lead New York by 6, National League East. New York comes in here to play Atlanta after the Cardinals are finished this weekend, and the Braves have had the Mets number. That was close, but Vince gets back. Atlanta has won 5 of 6 from New York. Despite a record 4 under 500. Chuck Tanner's Braves are only 6.5 off the pace set by Cincinnati in the West. And a strike.
Coleman standing on first base when Zane Smith went home. So apparently Bruce Del Canton, and I'm sure Tanner's worked on it also, getting him with a little different leg kick. Joe West, the first base umpire, is probably focusing on the right foot to see if it goes past the rubber to the outfield side, and then he has got to go home. He goes to first, it's a ball. So he's mixing up his moves to home and to first base. It could wreck his control, though.
0-1 pitch. Outside, and Virgil throws down to first, but Vince is back ahead of Perry's tag.
You look at the Cardinal lineup, Bobby, and Lindeman is just called up, but you put Pena behind the plate, who throws much better than Ozzie Virgil. You got an all-star team out there. And all these guys, you go through Coleman and Smith and Herr and Clark, and McGee's had Gold Gloves, all-star, MVP. Pendleton is playing like heck. It's a marvelous team.
The 1-1 pitch. Down and away, 2-1. Zane Smith was 8-16 last year. He's already matched the victory total and has lost only 4 times. He's received good run support, and that accounts for an 8-4 record with an ERA of 4.07.
Great base stealer, really slows the pace of the game down. He's behind another, and he was to Ozzie Smith also.
There he goes on this one, swing and a miss. Throw from Virgil. In there, and it was close. Virgil with a good throw, but Coleman beat it.
The second half of this, he did not get an outstanding jump as Zane Smith sped up his delivery. The swing, and it was a breaking ball that allowed him a fraction of a step, and then the swing by Herr just distracts Ozzie Virgil a little bit. May have bumped him or at least obstructed his view, and that was the difference. I mean, the second half of that was just extraordinary, the way he just accelerated. When he knew he had a bad jump, it looked like he put her in second gear and he was off.
Coleman's major league leading figure now at 52, and he's equaled the Braves team total of steals. Now a 2-2 pitch to Tommy Herr. And Coleman breaks for third, and it's hit through the middle. Hubbard backhands.
He's coming home.
Herr's going to beat it. Coleman to the plate. Safe. Oh, man, is that scintillating baseball. If Hubbard had a second chance, he'd realize that while Herr is not a speedster in the Coleman category, Tommy does run pretty well despite the history of knee injuries. He had little chance to get him at first. He should have held that ball and kept Coleman at third.
The ball wasn't hit hard. It was a jam shot with Coleman on the move. And because it was a jam shot, I believe Hubbard felt there's no way he could get a good jump out of the box. He could get nothing on the throw. Nick Leyva, the third base, said, go on in. And there he goes. Coleman had to be pointed out to him where the ball was by Nick Leyva, and as soon as Nick Leyva pointed that the ball was in the middle of the diamond, Coleman picked it up, and man, did he accelerate again. Who's more exciting than him? I guess Ricky Henderson and Eric Davis when they're healthy, both of whom got bad legs now.
1-0 to Clark. A homer and 4 more RBIs last night. He leads the league in RBIs. He leads in walks. He's tied for first in homers. He's second in slugging percentage and in runs. He's third in on-base percentage, and he's among the leaders in batting average. Not a bad year. Way outside.
He'll have what, about 80 RBIs or more by the All-Star break? And he's changed his stance. So a couple of years ago, he was up on the plate, a little bit open stance, trying to pull everything. Jack found that he was pulling a lot of good pitches to hit foul out of that stance, so he moved off the plate, closed his stance. Very unique the way he's got that right leg pointed back at the catcher.
Called strike. 2-2. At his present pace, Clark would drive home better than 160 runs and hit 50 homers. The last time anyone drove in as many runs as Clark's present pace, you've got to go back almost 50 years. Here's a shot toward the gap in right center, but Murphy's going to be there, and he makes the catch. The last man to drive home even as many as 150 in a major league season is Tommy Davis, who got 153, I think, for the '62 Dodgers. George Foster came close for the Reds the year he hit better than 50 homers, 1977, with 149. But at Clark's present pace, he'd drive in 164, which would be the most in the majors since Jimmy Fox knocked in 175 in 1938. Now, if he can maintain that pace is another question, but it tells you how hot he's been and how many of his mates have been aboard to give him a chance to knock him home. McGee swings and misses.
Not to take one bit away from Jack Clark, but there are a lot of cheap RBIs around in this ball club because of their great speed. The way they go first and third, they steal second, steal third. The hitters are usually hitting ahead in the count because they're worried so about the potential base stealer.
And of course, runs in general are up all around baseball. Report in the USA Today yesterday, they checked the balls scientifically, and the folks at Rawlings had their position maintained. It is no different, they say, than the baseball of last year or of 10 years ago. It's the same scientifically. You are hard-pressed to find a big leaguer in the American or National Leagues, however, who doesn't think it's somewhat different. And to show you the difference it makes, Chuck Tanner noticed in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago,
and Larry Boa,
yep, that the Dodgers were using 1986 baseballs with Chub Feeney's signature on it rather than this year's with A. Bartlett Giamatti's signature. And he ran out to the plate umpire, Jerry Crawford, and said, "Get those Feeney balls out of here. I want the Bart Giamatti signature."
I mean, there are more stories coming out, whether it's accurate or not. Some have written already. I think Jack Lang in New York, that some of the balls that were destined to be balls for college, NCAA, which supposedly are livelier, were misstamped and gotten to the major leagues. So you got all kinds of crazy theories, including a hole in the ozone layer over the Antarctica.
Don't start with that.
Did Willie re-injure that knee? He's taking a long time.
It was actually Ozzie Virgil, I think, who got nicked.
But Willie was out and bending a lot and trying to stretch those knees after the knee surgery of last season. It took him a long time to get back in also after Ozzie was ready.
Her at first with 2 out, and the 1-2 pitch misses. Talking about the baseball, you know, it is impossible to simulate the exact effect of the bat, the ash meeting the ball at high speeds in game conditions. But in fairness to the folks at Rawlings, in the best scientific experiments they can devise, full count now, in those experiments, the folks at Rawlings are vindicated.
But they say a real sophisticated piece of equipment to really get it accurate would take about $1 million worth, and they are not about to spend that kind of dough to test a baseball. This inning is about, half inning is about 10 minutes, well, 20 minutes long now.
And it'll go a little longer as McGee fouls it out of play. Just to finish up on that point, I don't think it's Jack Clark's home run total or the length of a tape measure blast that makes you raise your eyebrows. It's when guys who weigh 155 pounds and have 5 lifetime homers send home runs to the opposite field on pitches they've been fooled on, or send guys to the warning track with check swings. Her off again, and McGee strikes out. But the speed of Vince Coleman, a single, a stolen base, and then racing home on an infield hit by Tom Herr, gives the Cardinals the early lead. '27-year-old Danny Cox, who's from Warner Robins, Georgia, about 100 miles south of Atlanta, faces this lineup: Deion James in center field, Andres Thomas, who will be the shortstop almost every day, with Rafael Ramirez added to the list of Braves casualties. Chuck Tanner says in all his years of managing, he's never seen a rash of injuries such as the series of misfortunes that have hit the Braves this year. Perry at first, Murphy in right, Griffey in left, Nettles playing his 9th consecutive game at age 42 is at third. Ken Oberkfell is another on the DL. Ozzie Virgil will catch, Glenn Hubbard at second, Smith the pitcher.
Starting pitching has not been outstanding for Whitey Herzog's Cardinals, but if you don't walk many, you make them put the ball in play, the outfielders run it down, and the infielders turn double plays and catch everything in sight.
Deion James takes low. Cox is 7-3. Hasn't won since June 14th at Wrigley Field. His last 3 times out. He's had no decisions. 2-0 to Deion Birdman James. He's the guy who hit the lazy fly ball in April at Shea Stadium to left field, and with Kevin McReynolds camped under it, the ball hit an unfortunate dove who was declared dead on the scene, and the ball dropped for a double.
Put everybody in mourning.
Ooh.
He's modified his stance again, I see.
Here's Herr from the outfield grass to throw him out.
Deion James had gotten that stance from out of the Brewers organization, watching Cecil Cooper. Cecil Cooper who had gotten it watching Rod Carew, but now Deion is standing straighter up. Cox has an outstanding changeup, and it will be Steve Lake, and you don't lose much defensively with Lake behind the plate, even though Pena is so great, to prevent Cox from falling in love with that changeup. So there's a couple different kinds of breaking ball, not exceptionally fast.
Andres Thomas sent a shot up the middle with the bases loaded in the 8th last night. It turned into just another installment in the ongoing Ozzie Smith highlight film, as Ozzie made a dive to his left, turned an apparent RBI hit into an inning-ending double play.
You get the bases loaded in that situation, Bob. That's at least 2 runs, probably first and third. The Atlanta Braves are looking to get right back in the ball game. And I don't know if it was Whitey said a bunch of years ago before the $2 million contract, Ozzie says 100, 150 runs. People doubted it. Maybe he does.
Let's see if Lake has the room. No, he doesn't. And I'll tell you what, there's an interesting call, possibly, for the plate umpire, Randy Marsh. You see the gentleman down there, the security guard, who got in Lake's way, unintentionally, obviously, but that ball lands in a place where, in theory, Lake could have caught it.
Looks like Ted Turner's box, which they put in a bunch of years back so they could get some better seating down there, and he got hung up on that little jutting out spot by the dugout, and then the security guard. I don't think he was close enough for there to be called any kind of interference. He's really part of the playing field, sitting down there, as are the bat boys.
If, in Marsh's opinion, though, the catch was a virtual certainty without the interference, then he could rule the automatic out. But since it would have been a tough play, Thomas is allowed to hit, and down he goes.
There's the great change. That is a change off the breaking ball by Danny Cox. Establishing the off-speed stuff early. There's Thomas way out in front. Took a little bit off the slider. He'll vary the speeds on that breaking ball. He establishes that early, and the fastball will look a lot harder.
You look at Cox at 6'4" and 225, and your first impression is he's probably an overpowering thrower. But as you say, Tony, he's a change of speeds artist, and the breaking pitch and the change, far more important part of his repertoire than the fastball. Perry bounces one slowly to third. Pendleton has a tough play, bare hands, but won't throw.
They would like to see Gerald Perry drive the ball a little more. That was an off-speed pitch hit off the end of the bat with Pendleton throwing back with 2 outs. The 3-man, they think Gerald Perry should be hitting more extra base hits, hitting in front of Dale Murphy. They think he will someday.
Despite those imposing figures, Murphy's in his first slump of the season. He's just 4 for his last 33.
Well, it goes hand in hand because Griffey hitting behind him is in a slump. So they're not going to give Murph too many pitches to hit. When Griffey was hot until he injured his back, I mean, they had to pitch to Murphy a little bit more. Now he's got a high on-base average.
Fastball up and in. Griffey's just 5 for his last 41, so those 2 spots have gone sour, at least temporarily, for Chuck Tanner.
Well, and Obergfell is sitting over 300, hitting ahead of them in the 2 spot a lot. He was getting bases on balls. You take him out, so they're less on base in front of Murph and not as much protection behind him.
Clark leads the league with 64 walks, Hayes of Philadelphia, and Murphy next with 63. So you can see how carefully they work to him. 2-0. 3 balls and no strikes to Murphy, who, like Clark of the Cardinals, has a contract that expires at the end of this year. Throw in Cal Ripken in Baltimore.
Jack Morris again, too.
Yeah, because he only went to arbitration, didn't truly sign a new contract with the Tigers. He'll be a free agent again. A lot of interesting names out there. Mike Schmidt, well, for that matter.
We got to stop using the terminology free agent because there hasn't been the last 2 years.
Something's fishy there for sure. So an infield hit by Perry and a walk to Murphy on 4 pitches. Braves have 2 on, 2 out.
Whitey Herzog left a couple special passes today for some dear friends. Late Roger Maris, Whitey and Mike Shannon in the Cardinal booth, 2 of Roger's closest friends. So Whitey left tickets for Susie, Sandra, and little Richard. Roger's 3 children along with Stephen, little grandchild. I'm trying to spot him with the binoculars, but there's a big crowd here. We couldn't pick him out for you.
Despite the recent slump, Griffey's still at 307. Ball 1 to him. The Braves have been lagging in terms of attendance. In fact, their average is the lowest in the National League, and only Seattle in all of baseball has drawn fewer on average, but they had a huge crowd last night and another good turnout today. 2-0. Cox has missed with 6 straight.
Talking about the Braves and their injury problems, they have Damaso Garcia, probably out for the season, more surgery. Ramirez out, Suter still out. He may never pitch again. They fear that Oberkfell and Hall, who may be activated. They were talking even before the ball game. And Griffey and Thomas also were on the disabled list, so that's 8 people.
Off-speed breaking pitch, misses again. 3-0.
This is a pretty good team for scoring runs, although you wouldn't know it lately with some of the slumps that they've had in injuries. But Bobby Cox has gone out and tried to get him over the hump this year. He's the general manager. Add some pop, hope the pitching comes along.
Fastball in there, 3-1. Greg Nettles is on deck. The 3-1 pitch on the outside corner, full count. So now Perry at second and Murphy at first will be off with the pitch.
Griffey obviously didn't like the call by Randy Marsh. The home plate umpire thought it was outside too much. Most of the fastballs that Danny Cox throw, when he is right, have some kind of movement. Tail away, sink sometimes, and come in on the fists of a left-hander.
Breaking ball low, and he walks the bases loaded now. After Perry hit that little nubber down the third baseline on which Pendleton had no play, consecutive walks to Murphy and Griffey, and a chance for Nettles, who in the absence of Oberkfell and now with Ramirez shelled, sometimes Rafael Ramirez could move to third with Thomas playing short. Nettles has become, in essence, an everyday player, and he has hits in 8 of his last 19 at-bats.
Bobby, I wonder if Danny Cox, and it's a very humid day, threat of rain here, he warmed up, and then there was the long first half inning with Coleman on and all the throws over, if he didn't get a little out of sync. And he was bothered by the foot in front of the mound the first few pitches. He was off balance with a left-hander, Smith, stepping in a funny hole.
In the
dirt. Look at this. He's still doing it. He's still settled. He's all out of kilter. His rhythm is completely gone. That'll get a trip from Mike York. And what do you say to a guy like this? But he's probably going to say, look, if the place you're stepping in is bothering you, why don't you dig it out? You're falling all over the place. So Mike York, Rourke. He's all goofed up.
Cox had first inning difficulties his last outing against the Mets at Shea Stadium on Monday. Keith Hernandez got him for a 3-run homer in the first. Then he settled down, pitched pretty well until he was removed for a pinch hitter. Wasn't involved in the decision, and the Cardinals rallied to win in 11 innings, 8-7. Cards lead 1-0 last half of the first. Bases loaded for Nettles,
who will not go out of his strike zone too often, especially now heading to count. Still turn anybody's fastball around. Cox doesn't throw that hard. He'll look something inside part of the plate.
Nettles hit a grand slam earlier this year, noteworthy for two reasons. One, they had one of those jackpot inning contests going, and he won some old guy, some guy in his 80s, $100,000 for hitting the homer. Nettles rused the fact that the guy didn't give him any portion of that as a token of his esteem. There's the curve in there. 2-1. He also became the second oldest player in Major League history to hit a grand slam, just a few months younger than Tony Perez when Perez hit the jackpot in '85 for the Reds. 2-1 pitch is drilled to right, but Lindemann is there, and the Cards are out of the inning. Lindemann had him played almost on the warning track, had to come in a few steps to make the catch, and the Braves leave 3. The reaction of Danny Cox after he arrived in the Cardinal dugout following that very shaky first inning gave the water cooler a kick. Switch hitter Terry Pendleton from the right side, hitting .315 with 5 homers, and he takes a ball. Cox is left talking to himself, but he still has the 1-0 lead. Hey, you look at a guy like Pendleton, this is the toughest year in recent memory for filling out all-star rosters fairly. Schmidt's going to start at third. You've got Wallach of Montreal. Terry's having a great year for the Cards. Just look at the outfielders. Right now, Davis, Strawberry, and Dawson are the leading vote getters and apparently will start. You've got to find a place eventually for Dale Murphy, for Tony Gwynn, for Tim Raines, and unless they go to 7 outfielders, Vince Coleman won't make it, and he's really ignited the best team in the league all season long.
He's been on base in 69 of the 72 games he's played. You saw what he can do to the pitching staff and the defense in that first inning.
And here's a ball whacked through the hole on the right side for a leadoff hit. So the Cards have the leadoff man on 2 straight times.
I don't know, Bob, if anybody's ever done a study on it, but they get about as many hits through the infield and infield hits as any team, and not just on the artificial surface. You know about the high hops, but on dirt and grass, the infielders have to play even tighter on the Cardinals because the bunt is more effective, the slow hit ball through the tall grass, and even then more balls get through. Hubbard right there was playing a little shallow for Pendleton in his speed, and he sneaked it by him.
Not to mention the movement in the middle of the diamond when runners are taking off. Get guys out of position. Now here's Lindemann, who was the talk of the Cardinals spring training camp as he forced his way onto the roster with his long ball bat. Off-speed pitch for a strike.
He did not appear in spring training the times we saw him down in Al Lang Field to be that bad of an outfielder. Boy, he hit some balls to right center field. A few times we saw him that were just crushed to right center. I would think if they're going to pitch him, they want to keep the ball up and in on him and then go away, but away low for sure. See, the Cardinals got David Green back in their organization. Nicaraguan, who's playing very well down at Louisville.
This will be an 0-1 pitch to Lindemann. Pendleton leaning, not going.
And that is a decoy. I mean, Pendleton did a psych job on Smith right there. He kept leaning like he's going, and Smith was halfway betwixt and between. He wanted to throw over, but he was in a mindset to go home, and he missed the strike zone.
He's got him going again, and he gets back without sliding, and it was very, very close.
He got his feet tied up, didn't he? Yesterday there was some rain, and there was some more overnight. Before the ball game yesterday, the tarp was off when it was raining. Was it coincidental, or the grounds crew have instructions to keep it nice and wet, like Alvin Dark used to do to Maury Wills, San Francisco?
This will be a 1-1 pitch with the runner not going, and it's bounced foul. Lindemann has had a busy past 24 hours or so. He played for Louisville. He was down there on his rehab assignment. Played in both halves of a doubleheader last night against Indianapolis at Louisville. He was 2 for 2 with a double and a homer in the first game, 2 for 4 with a triple in the second game, and then hopped on the plane to Atlanta. 0-2 pitch. 2 balls and 2 strikes. Tito Landrum released to make room for Lindemann. And although Landrum has had his troubles of late, even if his career should end here, and I don't think it will, he'll probably wind up with some other club, most likely in the American League. But he has some memories to hold on to. Pennant-winning homer for the Orioles against the White Sox in '83. Here's a bouncer to third. Nettles on the second hop, looks for the force and gets it at second base. And in addition to that pennant-winning home run off Britt Burns in '83, as we watch Nettles again, he had an idea about charging the ball, but he had to wait for the second hop. That made it close at second base. You remember how well Landrum did after Vince Coleman was hurt in '85 in the playoffs against the Dodgers, and then in the first few games of the World Series against Kansas City.
That last ball hit to Nettles 5-6 years ago. He's got that a hop or two sooner. That's a double play. Just waited back, and I think he's tired of playing so many consecutive games.
This is the 120th at-bat of the season for Steve Lake. It's already the highest at-bat total he's ever had. He languished on Chicago's bench for a long time behind Jody Davis, who is a real workhorse. But Whitey Herzog saw something in Lake, gave him a chance to play every day, had no choice really after Tony Pena was hurt.
Well, he saw excellent defense to help his pitching staff along, and he's getting a little more hitting than he thought he would. I mean, as good as Andy Van Slyke is, that is and some of the young pitchers, that is an outstanding deal for the Cardinals, getting a Pena.
3-0 now to Lindemann. Well, the Cards get Pena. Van Slyke has done a good job for the Pirates. They also get a right-handed pitcher named Mike Dunn, and LaVallier's been a revelation behind the plate. Lake with the walk on 4 pitches. So the Cards
pitcher up next.
Have 2 on with 1 out, and Cox will come up in a sacrifice situation. You know, you talk about the all-star catcher spot. Gary Carter's going to win the vote. There'll be support for Jody Davis. Ozzie Virgil has 20 homers, but Mike LaValliere is really a good defensive catcher, and he's hitting around 300 for Jim Leland in Pittsburgh.
See where he's tried switch hitting a little bit now too.
Those all-star selections this year, what controversy will be caused?
You know, you walk a Lake with just 1 out, and the pitcher's up, and obviously he's not trying to walk the 8th place hitter, but he is so out of whack from throwing over to first base so much he can't find the strike zone. It has completely upset his rhythm. And here's a guy coming off a no-walk game, complete game, has beaten the Cardinals once this year, and they have just psyched him right out of the strike zone. It started with Vince Coleman. Very first hitter in the ball game.
1-0 the count to Cox. Nettles and Perry charging. He swings away and bounces it foul.
They had a rotation play on. Thomas was coming to third, which left second baseman completely open. And with that kind of alignment, sometimes the signal that is given, if they steal it, Leyva or Whitey, they can start some runners. You know, you've got a lot more breathing room down at second base, and they put the switch on. Look at the hole. The whole middle of the diamond is open for him with Thomas going over there. He'd have got it to the left side. He can run all day.
Now he squares, misses the bunt. Throw behind. They got him at second base. Lindemann was out there in no man's land, and Virgil cuts him down. Well, that takes a lot of heat off Zane Smith.
It's always a difficult play. This time they had a different rotation on. Thomas was not going to third, so that's partially what set up the play, the throw behind to Thomas. Of course, you're wanting to get a good break. The guy bunts through the ball, and you're dead duck.
And here's a little tapper. Thomas at shortstop goes to first, and that takes care of Danny Cox. Lindemann was hung up so far out there that Virgil had to double pump, waiting for Thomas to get back, and still had time to throw him out. Our threat goes by the boards. We wish you all a happy holiday weekend, and as we look back in baseball history, a lot of significant events on the 4th of July. One happened right here in this ballpark, actually spread over 2 days, 19-inning game between the Mets and Braves, and this was the most astonishing part of it. Rick Camp in the 17th inning. Look at Danny Heap out there on the warning track. He was the Mets left fielder. The Braves were down to their last out, trailing by 2 runs. They had no pinch hitters left, and they had to let Rick Camp bat for himself, and he unloads a home run to tie the game again. The Mets eventually won it in 19 innings. The game began on July 3rd, ended in the wee hours of July 4th.
3:30 in the morning, wasn't it?
There was about an hour and a half, 2-hour rain delay mixed in, and after it was all over, since they had promised the fans there would be a fireworks display, they set off the skyrockets at about 4 in the morning and woke up half the neighborhood. Here's Ozzie Virgil. Ground ball foul.
With the pace of this game thus far, any chance we can go day baseball, go to tomorrow morning?
It could be.
Ozzie with 20 home runs, but just 43 RBIs, hitting deep in the lineup, 7th. So you would have to say that he doesn't hit higher up, partially because of some of the players they have hitting there who are better RBI men, but he likes to hit more from a guy throwing from the windup than the stretch. He doesn't hit as well with men on base. And he's one of those guys, if you look at the numbers, why don't you pitch from the stretch instead of the windup, which is a longer delivery? He's got more time to time it as a hitter.
Well, of course, then you start playing mind games with your pitcher, which you figure might not be worth it to throw him out of sync. Both Smith and Cox, for different reasons, have had trouble getting comfortable today, and each is working against an opponent they have not had much success against in the past. That's high, 2-2. Both Smith and Cox have lifetime records of 2-5 against their respective opponents. Cox has a career ERA of over 6 against the Braves, and Smith has yielded better than 6 earned runs an outing against the Cardinals. Here's a high drive to left center, but it's not going to make the track. Willie McGee is over for the catch.
With Coleman and McGee in left and center, I mean, if the ball stays up in the air longer than the blink of the eye, they're somehow going to get underneath it. And that is so important to a pitching staff. It's not just the inner defense that is so good for this ball club. The best in the baseball is something, and maybe the best of all time. Jack Clark, not exactly a gazelle at first, but Hurd covers a lot of ground to his left.
Could you imagine, just for the sake of fantasizing about it a little bit, if Keith Hernandez were still with the Cardinals? It'd almost be an open and shut case that they'd have the best defensive infield, at least in recent memory, and maybe one of the best of all time.
Well, you go to Brooks, Belanger, Gritch, Luke Powell at first. That was an awfully good one. Her now, since he's lost a little bit of weight, running better, his knees, not as much pressure on it. Ozzie plays in short left field for a lot of right-handed hitters, and he chases everything down, reacting to the ball off the bat.
0-2 to Hubbard, who's going to the opposite field more this year, not trying to pull everything. His batting average reflects it. Came in at 301. Fastball in on his fists, weakly to the right side. Lindemann is in for the catch. Talk about those fine defensive infields. Clete Boyer, Tony Kubek, Bobby Richardson, and either Moose Skowron or Joe Pepitone wasn't bad.
Pepe was outstanding.
Zane Smith now with 2 out and nobody on in the last half of the second.
Now Moose is sitting back there in Chicago with Skowron saying, did Kubek just take a shot at me because he said Pepe was outstanding? No, I didn't, Moose.
I think the biggest difference between Skowron and Pepitone wasn't their gloves, it was their hairstyles. Moose still with the crew cut, Pepe with a variety of wigs. 1-1. It will take about, assuming Smith doesn't reach base, about 50 minutes to play the first 2 innings of this game. Tries to drag a bunt. It's not bad, but Cox comes up with it and gets him at first base. So we'll be right back after these messages from your local station. And there's a rather remarkable comparison. Ozzie Smith with just 1 fewer run-driven home without hitting a homer, and Virgil has 20 of them. In fact, Ozzie, who has hit as many as 6 in a season, that was back in '85, hasn't hit a home run in his last 822 at-bats, dating back to the 5th game of the 1985 playoffs against the Dodgers. And this is the only homer Ozzie has ever hit left-handed. Tom Niedenfuhr, the victim, and it's gone in the 9th inning to give the Cardinals the game and a 3-2 edge in the National League playoffs. Here's Coleman to lead it off in the 3rd. Ozzie has 13 regular season home runs, all right-handed. Coleman trying to bunt, fouls it off, and then he hit that lefty shot off Niedenfuhr in the playoffs. And that is the last time he's circled the bases.
Remember way back in spring training, Whitey Herzog was trying to agitate Vince Coleman a little bit, saying if he doesn't start swinging down on the ball, instead of uppercutting, striking out, if he doesn't start taking more pitches, if he doesn't improve his outfield play, he's going to sit. Now, Vince Coleman had to do all the work himself, but I think Whitey had a way of getting to Vince. He is having a heck of a year. His outfield, he'll still misjudge a ball on occasion and then outrun it. He really hasn't played that much baseball. Offensively, he has been a big difference, taking a lot more pitches.
Two and two the count. Full count. Smith has walked one, struck out one. His last time out, he not only took out the San Francisco Giants, shutting them out for the 2nd time this season, but he took out Billy Williams. And this is the last thing he wanted to do. He walks Vince Coleman to start the inning, and you can almost hear Chuck Tanner moaning all the way up here. I mean, Vince never hits a home run. You're better off on that 3-2 pitch to just groove a fastball.
He is so out of rhythm, Bob. I mean, he's trying to. He's not trying to walk him, obviously. But he just got so goofed up in that 1st inning, Zane Smith, throwing over, looking out of the corner of his eye at the base stealers, and he's doing it again.
Figure it out. If you groove a fastball, what's the worst that's going to happen? Maybe Vince hits a double. This is almost a double now.
I agree with you, but he's not trying to walk him. He's trying to groove a fastball, and he's all goofed up.
Just a friendly exchange. Don't get testy now. It's a holiday weekend. We should be enjoying ourselves.
How about this, Ozzie Smith? Here's a guy who has struck out just 14 times, but walked 45 in over 300 plate appearances. He takes so many pitches to give Coleman a chance. And then he'll get in scoring positions, and now he'll go after Ozzie, and that's how he's getting the RBIs. Getting a few more fastballs.
A 1 pitch, and it's squibbed foul. Not only is Coleman on a pace to steal 100 for the 3rd time, the Cardinals as a team will top 200, unless something catastrophic happens, for the 6th consecutive time. To find another streak of that length, you've got to go back more than 75 years.
The only team in the major leagues over 100 so far. San Diego has 99.
Bounce to the 3rd. Nettles looks for the force and gets it. Hubbard turns the double play, and you don't do that often with Coleman aboard and Ozzie at the plate.
There's just one of these slight advantages of having a left-hander on the mound. Get the switch hitters a couple of steps removed from first base. The roadblock from the former football player Vince Coleman. Nettles charged that ball a lot better than he did the last inning.
Even though Coleman has been removed from the bases, we'll finish the thought, to find a streak by a team of longer than 6 straight years stealing 200. You got to go back to the Cubs, as Herr grounds one to Hubbard, and his opposite number will throw him out. The Cubs at the turn of the century, and the Ty Cobb-led Tigers around 1910 or so. The Cards are in a class of their own when it comes to speed, and they lead 1-0 here as we go to the last of the 3rd. Deion James to start it in the last of the 3rd. He takes one low. He grounded to second his first time up. With Albert Hall sidelined by a knee injury, as Tony mentioned, he might come off the DL tomorrow. James has become the everyday center fielder. With Hall around, a lot of times Albert will be in center and James in left.
James, the guy they were looking for. man who can get on base, run the ball down in center field, take the base on balls, a base stealing threat. You get to Murph later down in the lineup.
2-1 to him. Breaking ball, pop back foul.
Deion James unfortunately stuck in robbing the out in the Milwaukee organization when they moved him to center field, and James had shoulder problems a couple of years, dislocations, diving for balls, so it set his career back, but he looks like he's back on the beat.
Full count.
Atlanta does not have a lot of major league prospects at the AAA level. You've got some good arms and some good kids down at the AA level, so they're trying to rebuild this farm system. So many of the outstanding prospects didn't pan out. But Brad Comets, Terry Harper, on and on.
Well, in fact, it was Commons who was sent to the Milwaukee organization in exchange for Deion James. Cox now has walked 3.
Comets having a good year at AAA ball now for the Milwaukee organization.
Once a prospect so highly regarded that the Braves considered a package involving Commons to the Red Sox that would have brought Jim Rice to Atlanta. All right, here's Thomas. Struck out his first time. On the outside corner, strike 1. Little reminder here, as we always do, we'll select the NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game at the conclusion of the contest.
Chuck Tanner's team does not have a lot of base stealing speed, but because they hit into a lot of double plays, he starts a lot of runners. Hit and runs with them. The problem you have with the Thomas is he looks so bad against the breaking balls from Cox the first time up. Tanner would be taking a chance, swinging through the ball and a throw out. Thomas had that breaking ball in his mind. He threw a fastball right down the middle.
If you've just joined us, Cards run in the top of the first. Coleman with a hit. He steals second and comes all the way home from second on an infield single by Tom Hurd.
Either Whitey Herzog or Mike Rourke sent Lake out to Danny Cox. No ball, 2 strike counts with nobody out. The pitch that pitching coaches get driven crazy by 0-2, and they make something a little too good. Cox does have trouble at times when he overthrows finishing off hitters. They want to make sure that if he's going to waste one, waste it bad out of the strike zone.
Got him for the second straight time.
He had him so confused. Took an 0-1 pitch, a fastball right down the middle, and he was finished. Came back with a breaking ball that was even a hanger. It was up in the strike zone, I think you'll see. Oh, wasn't that bad. It dropped off pretty good on the outer edge or near the outer edge.
Gerald Perry had an infield single his first time up and got as far as third in that first inning as the Braves left the bases loaded in their best chance so far against Danny Cox. Ball 1.
Chuck Tanner and Bobby Cox feel if they can stay around 500, they're starting to sink a little bit now. By August, that anything can happen in this Western Division. At this point, it doesn't seem like anybody wants to take off and take charge. Houston makes a run, then they kind of settled. Cincinnati, although Browning is pitching well in the minor leagues now, he comes back, he could be a big difference. Just a shutout complete game the other day in the minor leagues.
Tanner's team 6.5 back. Cincinnati leads the division by 2.5 over Houston, 4.5 over San Francisco. The Giants are down to 500 in the midst of a terrible slump after a fast start. And the Dodgers are 7.5 behind, going not totally out of it. With the runner going, here's a duplication of the hit in the first inning. Pendleton stumbled trying to charge it, but he couldn't have gotten him anyway. And what are the odds on that? In 2 consecutive at-bats, to place the ball in the same spot unintentionally like that.
Well, why don't I call Pete Axtell and see if he can give us some odds? Just a running fastball that Gerald Perry pulled off of, hit off the end of the bat. Well, that was happening. Pendleton was getting back off the ground.
So now Perry at first, James at second, and Murphy at the plate. He walked his first time up.
And lately, Dale Murphy's had to make the most of his RBI opportunities. All the pitching around and people not getting on base in front of him or behind him.
You know, I'll bet if Murphy were having a year like this 2-3 years ago, he'd be one of the starting outfielders in the fan vote. But if you look at the Braves ratings on WTBS, they're about half what they were a few years ago when they were first dubbed America's team. So the interest in the Braves around the country isn't what it once was.
Plus, there were such great starts by other outfielders. Andre Dawson was on a tremendous tear until recently. Eric Davis, before he got hurt, he cooled off. Candy Maldonado. Of course, Candy now is on the disabled list. Gwynn all of a sudden is up over 380. Raines is now one of the tops. And he's just been steady since day one and playing an outstanding right field.
2 on, 1 out. And the 1-1 pitch. Fastball, threw it by him.
Murphy's got a lot longer swing than Jack Clark, slugger from the Cardinals, and because of the longer swing, he'll go after more bad pitches, and when he gets in the slump, they last a little bit longer. He'll go on those streaks where he'll swing at breaking balls that bounce and outside the strike zone. They felt by playing him in right field this year, take a little bit of the pressure off him, and he would be fresher for August and September.
Little piece of the curveball, and he fouls it off.
That was a great curveball for Murph to hit, wasn't it? It's hung right upstairs. You get a guy who plays so much and plays so hard like Dale Murphy. He starts muscling the ball, starts swinging a little harder to catch up to the fastball. And he can take himself in the slump.
Outfield, of course, very, very deep. Infield looking for the double play, and Cox made Murphy wait too long.
Another thing, you know, when a guy like Dale Murphy is such a great team player, when things start going badly around him, the team starts losing, he tries to carry it on his back single-handedly. Then he starts swinging at some bad pitches.
In the dirt,
Wow.
Lake blocks it. Play at third.
Got the umpire.
Everybody's safe. Lake did a good job first of blocking it to prevent it from going all the way back, and then scrambling to recover it to get off his throw.
I'm not sure he blocked it. I think it hit the home plate umpire, Randy Marsh.
You're right. It went
Blocked
through
him
his
right
legs and hit Marsh.
Which made it close at third base. Otherwise, that ball's on the backstop.
Scored as a wild pitch, of course, so Lake could have saved himself some trouble and Marsh a lot of pain if that ball had just gone all the way back. The result would have been the same.
So now you got first base open. 2-2. He can afford to waste one pitch if he wants to. Griffey's slumping behind Murphy. He doesn't have to give him a strike if he doesn't want to.
Come on, Murphy.
And he got him to swing at a pitch out of the strike zone. Third strikeout for Danny Cox, and Murphy is shaking his head.
The guy goes from a 55-foot curveball that he overthrew to this one. Out of the strike zone, but the delivery fooled Dale Murphy.
As you said, Tony, he's used to carrying the team. He's been in a little slump. He might be over-anxious in that spot. Now it's up to Griffey, who walked his first time. Ball 1 to him. Ken in the midst of a 5 for 41 slump.
Danny Cox still aware. He's got a base open. So he's got a base to play with, and he's usually a guy who has good control, although today he has struggled a little bit trying to adjust to this mound.
Whoa. 2-0. Cox, whose game is control, has started 10 of the first 14 hitters he's faced with a ball.
I've never really seen his delivery like this, where when he plants that front foot, his back is almost facing the hitter right after he releases the ball. He's really out of whack.
It's 3-0.
Don't tell that to Bob Gibson, the great Hall of Famer who pitched that way and was still one of the great fielders of all time.
not going to fool around. They give him the last ball intentionally and load the bases.
Well, Whitey said, hey, what the heck? See, now if he with the bases loaded, he can get ahead of a hitter and throw some strikes. Nettles who hit the ball very hard with the bases loaded in the first, lined out to Lindemann in right field. He got behind him, too.
Nettles has 4 career Grand Slams, including one this year. Last night, Herzog got a superior performance from Bob Forge, who took his record to 7-3 and pitched easily his best game of the season. Had a 2-hitter going into the 8th before he finally weakened.
Ken Daly really threw the ball hard when he came in also.
Yeah, against his former mates. There's a breaking pitch in a good spot for strike 1.
That seems to be the pitch he can get over and wants to get over even when he's behind in the count, so he starts Nettles off with it.
This one is lofted to left. It's pretty deep, but Coleman has room.
He got away with a bad pitch. Hanging breaking ball.
Second time, Cox has been able to retire Nettles with the bases loaded. So the Braves have stranded 6. They have nothing to show for it. Here's a look back now at a very special Olympic moment. Jack Clark is the leadoff man in the 4th, and wouldn't it be ironic if the difference in the home run race is a couple of plays earlier this year in Cincinnati? Right now, Murphy and Clark have 24. Eric Davis has 23. Consecutive nights at Riverfront, Davis takes homers away from Clark. He gets on the trampoline and yanks this one back, denying Jack the Ripper another homer. And here's the next night, just in case you didn't believe it the first time. Hello. Otherwise, Clark could have 26 and the leadership all to his own.
See where the Cincinnati Reds called Dave Collins back up. He played for Sparky and some of those good Big Red Machine, and Collins started the ball game yesterday. Had a base hit and an RBI.
Speaking of well-known names, now in the minor leagues, all the Brave fans remember Pascual Perez, who at last check is 6-0 for Indianapolis, an Expos farm team, AAA, in the American Association.
Buck Rogers says he's ready physically. We want to test him mentally and emotionally. Jack Clark, who learned an awful lot from one of his first hitting instructors, Cubs slugger Hank Sauer.
1-1. Jack fly to right his first time.
Once in a while, when he gets a little bit of a slump, he said, just to straighten my head out, I'll call Hank. So I learned a lot playing with Bill Madlock, who taught me a lot how to hit with men on base. It's a guy that uses a 34-inch bat, a slugger. You won't find many sluggers standing that far off the plate use a 34-inch, 32, sometimes 31-ounce bat.
Look at that uppercut swing, even on a pitch down around his ankles. In center field, Deion James for the easy catch.
Take him out of the lineup. He was most of last year. Where are the Cardinals? They're all having good year, but that bat in the middle really makes a difference for all the people around him. His temper is really cooled also. He was a volatile guy back under Frank Robinson before that.
Willie Dean McGee takes a strike. He's hitting around 380 his last 25 games or so, and he's on nearly an RBI per game pace in that span. He's driven home 58, second behind Clark on the club.
Cardinals leading the major leagues in runs scored coming in today. They're not playing with the DH either, folks.
And they've got a team batting average of 285.
Whitey Herzog had McGee hitting in that 5 slot because he doesn't strike out much, doesn't hit in the double plays, plus coming off the bad knee, he didn't want to hit him in the second spot or third spot. Felt he wouldn't be a stolen base threat, and Willie's still a little reluctant to slide coming off the knee surgery.
2-2. The protection he gives Clark really has a number of aspects to it. First of all, he's just a good hitter. But second, he's a switch hitter. And he doesn't hit into that many double plays, so it makes you think twice before you walk Clark to load the bases if first base is open.
Well, with 2 outs, Joe West gives a safe side. With 2 outs, there's the base open. You walk a Jack Clark. With 1 out, you don't walk him. It's a different strategy because of the reason you said. He won't strike out much. Or hitting the DPs. It's a quiet crowd here today. Are they burned out from the big gala of last night, the fireworks and the pregame show that lasted about an hour?
Although Willie doesn't strike out that often, he struck out twice today. 2 up and 2 down in the 4th.
Strikeouts 44 and 45 for McGee.
So in truth, Willie is on a pace that would put him over 90 strikeouts for the year. He kind of led me down the primrose path on that one. Just trying to back up your point.
That isn't a whole lot for a 5-hitter, though. You look at the American League, and you're going to be about how many guys strike out over 150 times? At least a dozen. And there could be a couple of guys going, you know, Bo Jackson, Corey Snyder, some of the others get 500-600 plate appearances. They could go 185 to 200.
Pendleton just trying to distract Smith, bluffing the bunt, takes a strike, 3-1.
Incaviglia over there, and he's over 90 now, along with Bo Jackson.
3-2. Lindemann next if the inning is prolonged. And the payoff. Breaking ball, numbered down to first. Perry unassisted. Perfect inning for Zane Smith. To the last half of the 4th. And it's still 1-0 St. Louis. John Tudor lost to the Cardinals since the freak accident when Barry Lyons ran into him in April at Busch Stadium. The Met catcher and dugout collision. Tudor sustains a broken leg. Here he is throwing before the game today, and Herzog is optimistic that he'll have him back by August.
He's thrown about a half a dozen times since the cast has been off. Said the arm is not strong yet. He said, but the ball is moving. He is really optimistic also. Walking around with a bat in his hand yesterday. Wants to take batting practice. They won't let him do that yet.
Cox faces Ozzie Virgil in the last half of the 4th. Danny nursing a 1-0 lead. And a curveball for a strike. Well, they've been without Tudor. McGrain went on the disabled list for a while. They had to banish Greg Matthews to Louisville to work out his mechanics a little bit. Now he's come back and pitched well for them. He'll pitch here tomorrow against Doyle Alexander. Fouled out of play 0-2. Through it all, Whitey's got the Cards in first place by 6 lengths. But it hasn't been the pitching, except in spots. Overall, it hasn't been the pitching that's done it. They have a staff ERA of 4.15. And if they should win without improving that pitching, they'll be only the 2nd divisional winner in history with a team ERA over 4. That's low. The 1979 California Angels managed to do it, then lost in the playoffs to Baltimore. That's the only time in either league since they went to the divisional setup in '69 that the division winner had that high a team ERA.
Well, you look at the bullpen and see what Daly has done since coming back. Ricky Horton, Pat Perry, and Worrell struggle a little bit, but boy, their bullpen's been pretty good.
He got in on him, and Cox is going to make the catch himself.
And even with all the injuries you just rattled by that the Cardinals have had, they haven't had as many of their pitching staff as Davey Johnson, and now they've got all that turmoil with everybody shouting at everybody else. I think they need a social worker to come in and sit down with Davey Johnson and his team and say, folks, let's start getting together. Let's get it out on the table, or psychoanalysis, or whatever else.
Well, both Darryl Strawberry and Mookie Wilson now say they want to be traded. Hubbard flied to right his first time. Curveball, strike.
And you can see now the delivery, whether it's Mike Rourke on the bench or Cox has found it himself, he is not trying to overthrow as much. He still has his back toward the hitter at times, but not really as badly.
Of course, one other thing you have to consider when you talk about the raw numbers on the team ERA being high, everything is relative, and scoring is up in both leagues this year. This one is lined to right. We told you about Hubbard going more to the opposite field. He was hung up too much on pulling the ball, and while he has better power than his size would indicate, he might hit 240, 250 and pop 8 or 9 homers. They've convinced him to go the other way and raise the batting average.
Plus, he's perfect for an 8th place hitter. He will take a lot of base on balls, which the 8th place hitter will get quite a bit. And yet, if you get him in on base and you get a little too close to the strike zone, he can still hit the ball hard and go out of the strike zone and take a chance in driving a run in. It's not the easiest spot in the lineup to hit, perhaps the toughest in the National League.
Smith tried to drag a bunt for a hit his last time. Now in a sacrifice situation, he pops it up. Lake has it. So Smith misses a chance to help himself, can't advance the runner. And now it's up to Dion James with 1 on and 2 out. James has grounded out and walked. Hubbard with a modest lead at first, held by Clark. Ball 1 high.
He doesn't have a stolen base yet this year, Hubbard, and some of that again because he's hitting 8th. The other, he's never had good speed. He has convinced Chuck Tanner what kind of player he is. I'm not so sure that Chuck was really high on Hubbard. He talked about a lot of other people playing second base for this ball club, but he's done an outstanding job, and Hubbard's always been very tough starting and pivoting on the double play. And he's hitting for Tanner, getting on base a lot this year.
Happy 58th birthday today to Chuck Tanner, born on the 4th of July, just like George M. Cohan.
And George Steinbrenner.
Yep, George Steinbrenner. And Hal Lanier, the Astros manager, has a birthday today. Longtime third base coach of the Cardinals. Three and 1. Swing and a miss with the runner going, and Hubbard, as you see, still has no stolen bases. That'll do it in the last half of the 4th, and we'll be right back after these messages from your local station. He's already an all-star shortstop. Some say one day he'll be a manager, but you didn't realize that Ozzie is also a commissioner. He's the commissioner of the exclusive Judy Club. Now, in order to belong to this club, you got to wear a Cardinal uniform and have fewer than 5 home runs for the season. Ford has 3, hit a couple the other night in Montreal, and Lake and Pena each have 1. So the whole Judy Club, all the others without a homer, has just 5 home runs and better than 1,000 total at bats. Commissioner Smith had to expel Terry Pendleton from the Judy Club after Terry hit his 5th homer of the season against the Phillies about a week and a half ago. And the way it works, every time one of the Judys hits a homer, all the other members of the club have to pay him $50. So Pendleton had collected about $600–700 before they said, out with you.
And of course, the Judy Club derived from the age-old baseball expression, a hitter that doesn't hit many home runs is a punching Judy.
Lindemann,
which you were at Syracuse, I understand.
Slick glove, weak bat. The 1-2. Fouled off. But I was also remarkably slow for my size. The Cardinals have beaten the Braves 4 times in 7 tries this year, including last night. That victory, by the way, for Bob Forsch was the 150th of his career, during which he's never worn any uniform other than that of the Cardinals. And he has had not a great career, but truly an admirable career. They've counted him out 3 or 4 times. Age and injuries people thought would send him packing, but no, he keeps coming back, and he's a very useful pitcher for Whitey Herzog. Another 1-2 pitch from Zane Smith. Lined hard and foul.
Whitey's won with all kinds of clubs, hasn't he? He lost Bruce Sutter. They said the bullpen would be shot, and the bullpen was good that year. Last year, of course, everything went out the window with all the injuries and the carryover from all the pressure the year before.
2-2. Well, he took over from the late Ken Boyer in 1980. Cards had the best total record in the National League East in the strike season, but the split season concept eliminated them in 81. And they did win it all in 82. In the air to shallow right. Murphy got a late break on it, but he has time as it hangs up there, and he makes the catch. Then with a drastically different club, they win the pennant in 85 and have a 3-1 lead on KC in the series before the Royals came back.
And he has not been afraid to make bold moves. I mean, you trade a popular guy like Keith Hernandez. You got a Suter. He's gone. The trade for Pena when Van Slyke was just starting to get into really a complete type of ball game, and he's doing a good job for Pittsburgh, and it goes on and on.
Lake walked his first time.
So Whitey gets a 2-year extension on his contract, and the former great shortstop Del Maxwell, now GM, a year's extension.
Another guy Whitey traded, very popular figure, fixture in St. Louis, now in the Atlanta dugout as a pinch hitter, Ted Simmons. And boy, that raised a ruckus when he did it. Slap to Perry, but he makes a nice catch on the liner. Blake tried to go the other way. Perry foils it.
6 in a row set down now by, make it 7 by Zane Smith. Back to the double play in the third. And Coleman walked.
So now it'll be Danny Cox, top of the 5th, 2 out, nobody on, 1-0 St. Louis on a first inning run. The Mets are at Cincinnati tonight. John Mitchell 1-1 against Bill Gullickson, who's 7-5. Reds beat them last night 8-3. Into right center field, Deion James dives and can't get it. Extra bases. Murphy has to chase it to the track. How much does Cox want to run? Enough to try for a triple. And he's going to make it.
See, a little subtlety in the differences in the defensive play. Deion James is not a slow runner, but if McGee starts in the same spot that he did, McGee eats that ball up. Zane Smith will have to face at least one more hitter this inning and perhaps one more later on in the ball game, and it could get worse. Cardinals sometimes only give you 1 or 2 outs in an inning. Defense with not as much speed as Atlanta. Sometimes they give you 4 outs.
This is a very hot, very humid day. Cox has thrown a lot of pitches. He's been behind on hitters. Now he sprints to third. They make an appeal at second to see if he missed the bag. But Bob Engel, the umpire down there, says no.
Give you a shot.
It looks like he got it.
Yep.
Although we're obscured a little bit by the ump's legs on the replay. Ball one high to Coleman, who's singled, stolen a base, his 52nd, and walked. So you have to wonder now, with Cox down at third, how much that might have taken out of it.
Early in the ball game, Zane Smith tried to drag a butt and get on. He ran a little bit also. Infield way in now in case Coleman beats one in the dirt or tries to bunt. They still try and pitch Coleman up in the strike zone, but that's a tough strike to get. He still has a slight uppercut and will swing through balls or pop them up.
You saw that National League leading triples total for the Cardinals. Coleman and McGee lead the way with 6. Milt Thompson of the Phillies and Tony Gwynn of the Padres lead the league with 7. That's fouled out of play. Cardinals trying to add to a 1-0 lead. Cox at third with 2 out. 2-2 the count to Coleman, top half of the 5th. Line foul down in the vicinity of the Cardinal bullpen. series concludes here tomorrow. Doyle Alexander 4-3 against Greg Matthews, who's 5-6. Matthews is pitching very well of late for St. Louis. Hooked up in a good duel his last time with Gooden at Shea and led 2-0 in the 7th. Eventually the Mets rallied and won 3-2. Breaking ball is punched into left, and it's going to drop for a hit. So the 2-out triple by Cox proves to be a very big hit. Coleman scored the first run. He drives home the second, and it's 2-0 Cardinals.
Coleman on base all 3 times. Single, stolen base, run scored. And he scored on that throw to first base all the way from second when he was on the move. He's walked. Coming into today's game, an 80-point differential in Coleman's bat right to left. He was hitting just 240 from the right side, 321 from the left side.
Pitch out, but he's not going on the first offering to Ozzie Smith. The real figure you have to look at for Coleman, in addition to the steals, on base percentage. As long as he gets there, it doesn't matter if it's a hit or a walk. His on base percentage this year is .383, counting the 3 times he's reached base today. His career on base percentage in 2 seasons prior to this one was .311. So he's hiked it better than 70 points. Close, but back in. Is 2 for 2 in this series. 1 last night, 1 today on attempted steals. He bluffs the go, and Smith hammers one to center. Back goes Deion James, and he can't get it. It bounces up against the fence, which is a break for the Cardinals because it almost bounced over, in which case Coleman would have had to stop. Now he's able to score easily. It's another RBI for Ozzie. His 43rd of the season, 3-0 St. Louis.
You just had a chance to see how much that man, Vince Coleman, means to the number 2 hitter, Ozzie Smith. They pitched out. Ozzie Smith got ahead in the count, and then he sped up his delivery. By speeding up his delivery, he got a sinker ball up, and he burns him over the head of Deion James. So in so many ways, that great base stealer like Coleman helps the guy behind him. Like Henderson helped Dwayne Murphy a year or 2 with the Oakland A's.
You can't tell from that replay, but that ball barely missed bouncing over the fence. It hit near the yellow line on top of the fence, and it could have been an automatic double in that case, and they would have stopped Coleman at third.
Now here's little Ozzie Smith from the right side, who hits from just about 400 feet to dead center field. What does that tell you? He's gotten a lot stronger?
Well, he has gotten a lot stronger.
Yeah, I know it. A little bit heavier, maybe 15 pounds.
He worked out in the off-season. Those watching in St. Louis are well-versed when it comes to this story, but he worked out in the offseason with Mackie Shilstone, the exercise guru and nutritionist who bulked Michael Spinks up from light-heavy to heavyweight. And Ozzie packed on 15 pounds of muscle. Feels he can drive the ball a little better. Also last year, he was bothered by the sore right shoulder, which not only affected his throws from the hole on defense as Jim Acker gets ready in the Atlanta bullpen, but he felt prevented him from really coming through with his swing and getting that good top hand action. Now the shoulder isn't bothering him as much in 87. That's a strike to hurt.
A little bit of the same thing happened with Tony Fernandez with the Toronto Blue Jays. He'd had some weakness in his shoulder, and he wanted to really strengthen the shoulder for throwing, as Ozzie did. And what it did was help Tony Fernandez hitting from the left side to drive the ball better.
Her has an infield single, and he's grounded out. 1-2. Ozzie down at second with 43 RBIs without a homer. A couple of years ago in the pennant-winning season of '85, Herb became the first hitter since George Kell of the Tigers in 1950 to drive in better than 100 without hitting as many as 10 homers. Here we see Ozzie, who could drive in close to 100 if this pace continues, without hitting any homers.
Then Tommy made the mistake, if I can drive in 100 with 10 home runs and hit third, why don't I bulk up a little bit? The extra weight may have hurt his knees and restricted his swing and his defense. You know, I think it depends upon the individual. Tommy Herr has a little different body than Ozzie Smith. But Tommy Herr, when he puts added weight and lifts weights, probably slows his bat speed down and affected his defense. And Ozzie Smith, he never lost his reflexes. He was still as quick as far as running. So the weight, I think, can help some guys and hurt others, the weight training.
2-2 pitch. Slow roller, second base, and Hubbard throws him out. But after 2 out, a triple by Cox, a single by Coleman to drive him home, a double by Ozzie to plate Vince Coleman. Rookie left-hander Joe McGrain, there he is. Not only is he 5-1, but what a frame of reference this kid has. I had a brief clubhouse conversation with him last night after the game, and the talk touched upon Gertrude Stein and Joyce Kilmer. You mention those names to most ball players, they think you're talking about a couple of stewardesses.
Well, he's from Moorhead, Kentucky, and perhaps much of his wisdom comes from the former left-handed great Steve Hamilton in that area.
Perhaps.
Erudite himself with a little folksy humor.
Deion James was at the plate when Hubbard was thrown out stealing by Lake to end the 4th. This McGrain is truly remarkable. After pitching at Candlestick on a blustery night, he said, "Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be warm." Went on to DL. He said, "My arm has been x-rayed so many times it's starting to take on a subtle glow." You like these?
I love them. I'm waiting for more. He's thrown a lot of pitches. Danny Cox has got to be right around 80 pitches through just 4 innings. And they are struggling pitches. There's sometimes, and it was a humid day, but sometimes that doesn't matter. But when your delivery is smooth, you've got a good rhythm, you can take the pitch counter out, and the guy can go 150. That's why the durability of the Carltons and the Seavers and the Kuzmans, Nolan Ryan, smooth delivery, used the lower body, but his delivery's been really out of whack a good part of his ballgame, especially early. So he's had to labor, really. So the pitch count probably means more today than Cox. He won't be able to go as far.
Full count now to Deion James. Cox working with a 3-0 lead. But he himself helped to build with the triple in the top half of this inning, and he walks James. That's his 5th walk. Stargell congratulates James for opening the inning with a walk. Andres Thomas has fanned twice. If Cox can walk Thomas, he will have accomplished something. Last year, in about 350 at-bats, Thomas had 8 walks. Another foul.
He, of course, went to the hitting school in the Dominican Republic, and Damaso Garcia and Rafael Ramirez.
Ramirez, now on the disabled list for the Braves, had the quote that summed it all up. Said, "A walk won't get you off the island, man. You got to swing like a man." Of course, that's not always the best strategy. It is kind of a macho approach.
Always amazing me about George Bell. Second in the league, American League in home runs to McGuire now, but he doesn't strike out much. He's going to throw 130 RBIs on if he doesn't get hurt. That is one of the injured ankles. He's wearing this special brace, which has really helped him to play. Dave Pursley, the trainer for Atlanta, kind of designed it, made some modifications, gives him support. It's not the usual protective guard that you see hitters use when they foul balls off. This is for an ankle that has been sprained. Perhaps some ligament strains.
Fans getting into a wave in the background. Thomas pokes it through the right side. James rounds second and holds. So they'll bring the tying run to the plate with nobody out in the last half of the 5th. And they've got the big guns loaded now. Perry, Murphy, and Griffey.
See if there's some rattling around in the Cardinals bullpen. Expect that phone to ring any second and get somebody up. Ricky Horton, who's been something out of the bullpen. His sinker, good changeup. This looks like a left-handed Ned Garver. Remember Garver used to look like he was throwing darts at the old Kansas City Ball Club. Might have been a Brownie.
Yeah, Garver was with the Browns. think he won 20 games for them one season when they were a perfectly horrendous team.
I think he also had a no-hitter, but I don't think he got that with the Browns.
Perry has a pair of infield hits. Pendleton about even with the bag at third. And the pitch high and away. Steve Horn checks the baseball encyclopedia, and in fact, Ned Garber was 20-12 for the 1951 St. Louis Browns. Here comes Mike Rourke, the pitching coach,
trying to buy a little time as much as anything else. He knows after the long run that you pointed out, the triple, all the pitches and the heat and the humidity of Atlanta, so he's buying some times. 82 pitches by Cox, 41 have been balls. So Ricky Horton starts getting loose a little bit more quickly.
Of course, Cox has to finish the inning to get his 8th victory of the year and the 50th of his career.
These are the situations where they'd like Perry ahead in the count with a couple of men on, trailing by 3 to get something he can really mash.
2-0. And here's a drive to right center. Willie McGee stumbled a little bit, and it's off the fence on the fly. 1 run is home, and that is all. If
Oh, he didn't make it.
They got him at the plate. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
I don't know if Deion James picked that ball off the bat. He was very hesitant. Now, it is an outstanding relay. Willie McGee has a strong throwing arm, but he looked like he would breeze in. Here he is. He was halfway, and then he started to go back. You can see the runner on first. Thomas almost passed him. He had to hesitate. And then he makes a wide turn, and Russ Nixon picked up the next runner. Nixon, the coach, late blocks him off. This is why Cardinals are so good. Look at where Herr is, Bobby. He's right behind the infield, and that's a tribute. He knows the strength of Willie McGee's arm, so he did not have to go out into the outfield grass too far. He got the strong throw from McGee after he played the perfect carom, and really what made that play, although the relay was great and Herr's throw was great, and the block-off great by Lake, was the poor base running by Deion James. Don't know where he was. He just got all confused.
So now it's Murphy with second and third and 1 out. And I don't mean to come down too hard on James as we watch it one more time. It hit the wall on the fly, and you score at 8-4-2, and don't underestimate Herr's peg, which is a beauty, and Lake's tag.
Block planted that leg right on the point of the plate in the foul line and knocked James off the plate.
This inning illustrates the difference in this game and one of the differences between these two teams, really. In the top half of the 5th inning, James missed a diving attempt on what turned out to be a triple by Cox. Willie McGee catches that ball. I also think Willie probably catches the double that Ozzie Smith hit over Deion James' head. A tough play, but he probably makes it. This is fouled out of play.
They give Perry just a single on that. Of course, they went to second and third, Thomas and Perry on the relay throw home to get Deion James. And you can't fault Russ Nixon on that third base coach. He was waving him. In fact, he had to, because Thomas was going to run Deion James off third base. So they would have had an out either way. So Russ Nixon sees 2 guys almost tandem coming into third. He says, you got to keep going, pal. But you cannot, I mean, the execution of the Cardinals is always as good as anybody in baseball. It's not that they have great physical talent as far as running. You saw how they set up that relay, and they knew the strength of each other's arms.
So Cox, who is really laboring with the count now 2-2. the help he can get in this inning and get some from his defense. Now, Murphy just gets a little piece of it, and Lake holds on to the tip for the strikeout.
And an outstanding off-speed curveball by Cox. It was more of a big breaking overhand curve that he has thrown most of this game. He's thrown a little tight slider and a slur. This then is over the top, and it's a downer. You see how sharply it broke and almost got away from Lake.
So Cox is now fan 4. Murphy twice, Thomas twice. Griffey has walked twice. The figures you saw on the screen are incorrect for Griffey. He's hitting .307 with 10 homers and 40 RBIs. Strike one.
Cox, how he has struggled getting his fastball over the plate. When he got one over, Perry rifled it over the center fielder's head. Hitters could almost go up there, look for breaking balls now. He's getting this fastball over the plate too much, and Griffey might be. He's a veteran hitter. He's going away this time with the fastball, but he's only showing it to him out of the strike zone.
Here's what Chuck Tanner has to mull over. Cox has retired Nettles twice to end innings with the bases loaded. In this inning, he's had a guy thrown out starting from second on an apparent double that might have scored 2 runs, instead scored none. He's had Murphy, his big gun, strike out with runners at second and third and only 1 out, where a fly ball could have gotten them at least 1 run and put them on the board.
Yeah, a little bit of the fault has to go to a Thomas also on that, because when you're trailing especially, you should always look to the runner ahead of you. And really, he forced Nixon to send Deion James home. Otherwise, there would have been 2 guys on third base. So, you faulted Deion James for that, although he was kind of going back and forth whether to tag up or not. But he had to keep going. Nixon had to send him because they were going to get an out anyway. So the young Dominican, Andres Thomas, ran him off third base, which could end up being the ball game. You don't know. Certainly would have gotten Cox out of the game, it appeared.
Cox walks Griffey for the 3rd time, and now for the 3rd time, Nettles will bat with the bases loaded. And again, it's with 2 out. Rourke quickly to the phones.
We could see the left-hander, partner will we? Somehow, Cox has had a little bit of the feline in him today. And he seems to have 9 lives out there and getting hitters out when he's had to with poor control. Not his best stuff. Lee Tunnell now gets up, and Horton sits down.
Last of the 5th, 3-0 Cardinals. Nettles has lined to right and fly to left, ball 1.
It isn't as if Nettles hadn't done a good job with the bases loaded. He's left 6 on, but he lined hard to Lindemann in the 1st, and he just missed a hanging breaking ball that he hit deeply, but a little bit too high to left field.
On the outside edge, 1-1. So while the Braves have been frustrated while they've been at bat, more frustration when you think about the way the Cardinals have scored. Coleman all the way from second in the 1st on a little infield hit, and then their 2-run rally with 2 out on the top of the 5th started on a triple by the pitcher, Cox. In the dirt, he is hanging on by a thread.
He's going to have to make a quality pitch right here to Nettles.
It is wrapped, and Hurd knocks it down, picks it up, throws him out.
Ball hard 3 times, hasn't he, Nettles?
Cox has had 9 lives. Nettles has left 9 runners. Here's another edition of Characters of the Game. Clark will lead it off in the 6th. He's 0 for 2. He's flied out twice. We told you he has 24 homers. The rest of his teammates have 25. Put it in perspective. Look at these other sluggers. they don't have nearly the percentage of their team's total. Of course, Bell has a Barfield among his teammates, and McGuire at Oakland has Reggie Jackson and Jose Canseco. Murphy has Ozzie Virgil, who has 20 home runs, and Ken Griffey, who has 10. There's no other Cardinal besides Clark, who's in double figures in homers.
There's now with Lindemann on the ball club, who is a power hitter basically. A little more help from the right side against left-handed pitching. Jim Acker has been very inconsistent this year. He's had trouble keeping the sinker ball down and the knuckle curve. Working the other day with Gustel Kent and Doyle Alexander in the bullpen. How to get the ball back down. He's got a good arm. Right-handers, a lot of them hate to face Jim Acker with that hard sinker and a quick curve.
At the knees and on the outside edge, 1-1. So it's still 3-0 as we go to the 6th. After a last half of the 5th, in which the Braves had 2 walks, a single, and a long double, and didn't score.
Look out, Bobby.
That's going to drop beneath us. You got to learn to judge these foul pops. Otherwise, you wind up expending a lot of energy unnecessarily. Get at it.
Good advice, my boy. Here's where the Braves have been hurting. Garber's done a decent job closing ball games.
Clark chases a bad pitch and goes down on strikes.
Hasselmacher from the left side has struggled. That's why they went out and got Larry McWilliams, who's been pitching out of the bullpen for a while. Dedman has done a decent job. He hasn't been consistent from the right side.
Now here's McGee, who struck out twice against Zane Smith. Willie began the day at 297. Strike 1 to him.
McGee, a guy who doesn't know if the count is 3 balls and no strikes or no balls and 2 strikes. I don't think he ever alters its swing. He just is up there hacking usually. He's more disciplined now than he was a few years back.
Dropped almost 100 points from 85 to last year. Reaches for a pitch low and taps it foul. Hit .353 to lead the league in 85 in his MVP season. Then with the knee injury partly to blame, dipped to .256 last year.
Jim Acker apparently in there for just 1 inning, it appears. See if he can regain his confidence.
Just foul.
Had Tanner had plans, he probably would have done a double switch with Acker scheduled 3rd in the inning. He didn't make the double switch. So I guess he's just going to let him out there and say, look, here's some hitters, good hitters. Get your confidence back, work on something. It looks like he's working on off-speed stuff. Perhaps he's throwing the sinker ball a little too hard at straightening it out, so he's throwing a few more breaking balls. And that last one was a straight change, it looked like. Fastball in.
2-2. The left leg still affects Willie more. Batting from the left side, he can't drive off it as well. He's slugging as a right-handed hitter in admittedly fewer at-bats. He's slugging .587. As a lefty hitter, he's slugging .370. Waves at it, and he's got the hat trick. He's struck out 3 times.
Jim Acker not throwing hard, but perhaps Gustel Kent, the pitching coach, has asked him to back off so that the sinker ball has more movement. And you can see right there how it tailed away and had the downward action. He throws too hard, he ends up straightening out and getting the ball up. He started in the Atlanta organization, had arm problems, had surgery, and then Bobby Cox took him, wanted him in Toronto, got him there. Now Bobby wanted him back. Alexander also back here again.
Well, we have a chance. We tell you the telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball. 0-1 pitch, grounded to second. You'll listen to the following as we head for the commercial. Please do not reproduce or retransmit this in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. Acker strikes out 2, gets the other on a grounder in a perfect 6th inning. Happy 4th of July. The U.S. Gymnastics Championships tomorrow at 4:30 Eastern Time on NBC Sports World. How does Dick Enberg do it? At Wimbledon in the morning. Then in the afternoon, the Gymnastics Championships with Mary Lou Retton and Bart Connor. Truly a remarkable broadcaster. The attendance today, 36,050. That'll give them a boost at the gate. They had more than that last night, somewhere around 45,000. They have been averaging just over 15 a game, the lowest figure in the National League. In contrast, when the Cardinals head home after this weekend, as Danny Cox is still around now as we begin the last half of the 6th, to meet the Dodgers on Monday in St. Louis, another huge crowd will greet them. Only the Dodgers in all of baseball have drawn more people than the St. Louis Cardinals, who are averaging about 36,500 a game. And they have an outside shot, if the pennant race stays close and they're in it right to the end, an outside shot at drawing 3 million. If there is a better baseball town than St. Louis, I'd like you to show it to me. There may be some that are right there with them, but none better. Virgil is 0 for 2. Another great baseball town is right in that same state, Kansas City, where the Royals have a higher average attendance than the Yankees, playing in a city just a tiny fraction of the size.
Toronto beating the Blue Jays a doubleheader yesterday. The Blue Jays continue their skid, with KC beating them.
Breaking balls, swing and a miss by Virgil.
Last night, an historic moment for Royals fans and the Hauser family. Dick's number retired between games of the doubleheader, put in the Hall of Fame there, the late Dick Hauser. Nancy was all smiles with a few tears mixed in. What a great man. Bullpen's going for Chuck Tanner.
And a 1-2 pitch.
Cox is right at about 100 pitches now. And he's featured the breaking ball more than anything else. He's had Nettles hit the ball hard 3 times with the bases loaded. They've stranded 9, all by Greg.
Foul back, still 2-2. Some other action around the majors, and after Virgil's at-bat, we'll check it for you. Well, that game was over before we got to the park. They played a morning game at Three Rivers. Kipper beat Welch, and the Pirates, who won on a Russell shutout last night, beat the Dodgers again. Full count now to Virgil. Cox has walked 6. Virgil swung at a pitch up around his shoulders that might have been ball 4.
He has featured breaking balls. Jeff Dedman. He'll come out to pitch, but the man catching him is quite a story himself. So Bruce Benedict, his father played in the Cardinal and Yankee organization. He and wife Kathleen. 6:19 a.m. this morning, so he probably spent the night at the hospital. They had their 3rd child, son Griffin David. A big one, too, over 10 pounds. Congratulations.
The 7th walk issued by Cox as Virgil is on to open the 6th. He's given up 7 walks, 5 hits, no runs.
That'll show you that he has made pitches when he has to. He has had enough luck with Nettles hitting the ball hard 3 times with the bases loaded. But he's also had some good defense and a little sloppy base running to help him out. So all those things came together. Does that mean just because of this game it's the Cardinals' year? It's too early to say that.
Hubbard drills one to left center. Willie McGee goes back and has it at the edge of the track. Virgil back to first.
As he covered ground in a hurry, I can still see that play. He made off Carter up in New York. Shea Stadium. I mean, it was just a headlong all-out dive in the left center field and a line drive from Gary Carter. We're going to have a pinch hitter now. There was some question whether or not Trench Davis, a left-hander, would stay on the roster or they would activate Hall just before game time. We never could get the word from Bobby DiBiasio, the PR director, whether or not they made the move.
I spoke to Chuck Tanner about 20 minutes, half an hour before the game. They're going to send up Paul Runge as the pinch hitter. He said they might activate Hall tomorrow. In fact, likely they will, but he has not been activated for today's game.
Chuck has Trench Davis, a left-handed hitter, Benedict, Jeff Blauser, the young infielder, Gary Renicky, Paul Runge, who's hitting, and Ted Simmons. But he's saving Ted Simmons for perhaps a shot later in the ball game with men on base. It might be a game breaker. Last year, the Atlanta team was an outstanding pinch hitting team. This year, Simmons is doing a good job, but the team that's just extraordinary is the Cardinals. They're hitting about 360 pinch hitting and driving in a lot of runs. But that's because Whitey, I believe, plays them so much. He keeps the people on the bench fresh. It's Paul Runge.
Every year since 1981, Runge has spent part of the year in Atlanta, part of the year at Richmond, their AAA farm. That's here for Acker, who worked one perfect inning. Philadelphia has begun to play better ball of late under Lee Elia, and with a lead over Houston in the fourth. Cubs at Wrigley out in front of the Giants.
They won 6 or 7 now. Ruffin's starting to pitch a little bit better. Raleigh's been pretty good most of the year. Bedrosian finally messed up a save opportunity after the record-setting pace he was on.
Glenn Davis got him for a 2-out, 3-run homer in the 9th the other night in Philadelphia. 2-1 the count to Runge. Virgil at first, 1 out, 3-0 Cardinals, last half of the 6th.
Clark very passively holding Virgil on.
Checks his swing and fouls it off. That was a fastball that was running in on him, and had he been able to hold up, it would have been ball 3. 2-2 now.
These hitters have got that changeup and breaking ball on their mind, and they're check swinging. They're looking for the breaking stuff or half looking for it. He's gotten some breaks on fastballs with the check swings. Slider. Yep, right there.
Goodbye, Paul Runge. So that's strikeout number 5 for Cox, as against 7 walks.
Steve Lake put number 3 down. 1's a fastball, 2's a curve, 3's a slider. Wiggle the change. The simplest form of signs, and he also hit a great spot with that slider.
Deion James grounded out, walked twice. You know, when we were making the point about the difference between McGee and Deion James in center field, that should not be misinterpreted as saying that James is not a good player.
No.
He is a good player. But you're looking at, when healthy, a guy who can be a great player in Willie McGee. Liner to center. There's a hit for James, and Willie McGee will retrieve it. Throws in behind, and Virgil goes crawling back, but not in time.
I believe this. Take him out of another inning. Oh, man. But there had to be a second baseman there alertly. McGee had to know what was going on. It was not a surprise to McGee and her. It's a play that they've done before. But you got to have the people in the proper position.
The Braves have messed up so many things fundamentally today as to make this a very unhappy 58th birthday for Chuck Tanner.
Tying run coming to the plate right there again.
Oh, boy. We'll be back after these messages from your local station. Not only do players make mistakes, umpires sometimes do as well. Here's the angle Bob Engel got. And Virgil was blocked off by Tommy Herr's left foot. That's why he never got in there. Engel calls him out. But what he didn't see is this. Watch the ball roll away after the apparent tag.
Watch
Engel
top
is
of second
screened.
base. You can see Virgil's hand there. Engel couldn't see that. So, Cardinals get a break. Bob Hustle, he was there. Wonder if he'll see that replay later. They threw behind. Herr bobbled the ball after McGee did. I don't know if it'll change the game, but it might have. Even at that, it shouldn't have been that close. Virgil didn't run the bases well, as Andres Thomas earlier forced Deion James to go home.
Jeff Dedman now becomes the third pitcher as we go to the 7th. Facing Lindemann, who's 0 for 2, and the 1-0 pitch. Inside 2-0. You know, the point really is, Tony, as you said, even though Virgil deserved to be safe, why be in that spot? With 2 out, a sharply hit ball, you don't have any thought about going to third, trailing 3-0. Here's Nettles, and he throws Lindemann out.
Yeah, that's one of those plays, though, and it's interesting in this. It's one of those where Dana DeMuth is the third base umpire. Now, he probably was crowding toward third base in the event that Virgil tried to go, which was unlikely, but he had to be positioned in case there was a throw down there. So he maybe did not have a good angle, but if he had seen it, he should have reversed the decision. Obviously, he did not. Engel could not see it.
Lake has walked in line to first, wraps it to short. Andres Thomas got him. And here comes Danny Cox trudging out of the dugout.
He may just stand up there and take some pitches, and that's it. He has worked hard in the heat and sneaked out of a few tough jams with some help. How about McGee, though? You know, McGee makes the great relay throw to her, and they get Deion James. McGee throws behind the runner. That's pretty smart baseball, and you've got to have the tools in the arm to be able to do that, and the foresight to know where your second baseman is.
People concentrate on Willie McGee's speed and forget about his arm. He's got the whole package that has made him a Gold Glover in the past.
Spent 5 years in the Yankee organization. Whitey Herzog said, we got him. He didn't even know how to take a leadoff base. And since then, George Steinbrenner has put a lot of coaches on. Every level pitching coach, defensive coaches. Clete Boyer works with the defense in the minor leagues.
Got him from the Yanks in a deal that sent the left-hander Bob Sykes to the New York organization. Sykes, of course, is long since out of baseball. And McGee has become an all-star. 2-1 the count to Cox. 2 out, nobody on. Top of the 7th, 3-0 Cardinals. Two and two.
Dedman's 31st appearance. They've all been in relief. He's had a nice year. He's 2-2 with 4 saves. Garber has 8. That leads the club. Dedman not overpowering. Tries to keep the ball down and sink it. Drops down. It's cruel to do to the opposition pitcher, isn't it?
Showing no mercy. They got to figure Cox has had more than his share of the breaks today. 8th inning for Dedman out of the pen. Here's another edition of 7th inning stretch. From Don Mattingly, present great Yankee first baseman, to another all-time great who played that position in New York. And 48 years ago today, July 4th, 1939, Lou Gehrig's farewell.
I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. But I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for.
The Iron Horse lived but 2 years after that. In 1941, he passed away. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, more commonly known simply as Lou Gehrig's disease.
And Reggie Jackson, now with the Oakland A's and hitting the ball well, has been national chairman of that organization for quite a few years now. Contributes a lot of his time and efforts to it. In fact, that was the forerunner of the first old-timers game in baseball because of that ceremony. The Yankees did it. Now every team does it. Another successful one on Old-Timers Day with all the veterans in RFK Stadium in Washington. Chuck Stevens' organization, all the money goes to that to help down and out former Major League ball players. It's quite an organization. Quite a ball game, too.
That's when they brought, I guess, all the old Yankees back for the first time to honor Gehrig, and it caught on as an annual event, which others have since emulated. New right fielder, John Morris in right in place of Jim Lindemann. There's Morris.
All he did was come in and pinch hit and smoke a home run last night. The center field wall.
Andres Thomas loops one into center. Willie McGee. One out. There have been a number of memorable baseball occurrences on the 4th of July. Dave Righetti pitched his no-hitter, another Yankee note. July 4th, 1983 at Yankee Stadium, struck out Wade Boggs for the last out. Here's Perry, who's 3 for 3, a pair of infield singles, a booming double off the center field fence. And they'll retire him this time. Tommy Hurd throws him out. On July 4th, 1976, our buddy Tim McCarver, former Cardinal, now broadcaster with the Mets and ABC, lost credit for an apparent grand slammer when he passed Gary Maddox on the base paths. This is when he was with the Phils. Maddox was on first, heading for second, turned around thinking that the ball might be caught, and while he was retracing his steps, McCarver passed him, and there went the grand slam.
And who says then catchers make the best managers because they're smarter? Did Tim do that?
Pendleton will throw Murphy out. And so Dale's woes continue. He is now 4 for his last 36 and 0 for 3 with a couple of strikeouts today. Cox hangs on. The Cardinals riding a seesaw. This has never happened before, that a team would go from first to last and then back to first in the span of 3 seasons in run production. It's never happened in Major League history. And these figures are interesting not just as they pertain to the Cardinals, but look at how run scoring overall is up. 4.6 a game, good enough to lead the league in '85. The Cardinals are better than a run per game ahead of that this year.
Well, they're healthier this year. Whitey Herzog has Jack Clark's bat in the lineup all the time. You can't flip-flop out of the bullpen with all the switch hitters in there, and his bench is fresh. They don't strike out a whole lot. They walk more than the opposition. They don't ground into many double plays. They use their speed on the artificial surface better than anybody in the history of the game.
Put it all together, lead the Mets by 6, Expos by 6.5. Here's Andres Thomas. They'll throw Vince Coleman out. First time today they've retired him. He had singled twice and walked prior to that at bat.
What do you think he's worth per game? A full run? It's hard to tell. He could be worth that much the way he's been getting on base this season. 50 consecutive ball games. I don't think Elias could trace that. Couldn't really go back to find out what the record is. It'd be a difficult thing to research.
Ozzie Smith, 1 for 3, had a double his last time up.
They think the record, Elias people and Seymour Siwa from the Hurt Boys, is 74. DiMaggio after the 56-game hitting streak. They think.
Ozzie's career high for RBIs, 54 in both '85 and '86. He's at 43 already this season with 1 today. 3-0 to him with Tom Herr on deck.
Ozzie's always had the great hand-eye control, not just with the glove, but he rarely struck out. But with the extra bulk he's got, he had a little bit of that last year. He is getting a lot more base hits in front of outfielders. Probably because of what he just did to Deion James earlier this ball game. Hit it over his head, he's got to play deeper, and the little loopers fall in.
So that's the first base runner against Dedman. Prior to that walk, the bullpen had done a very good job. Acker set them down in order in the 6th. Dedman did the same in the 7th and got Coleman to open the 8th. It's 3-0 Cardinals. And against all odds, Danny Cox is still in the game.
Well, just when this inning started, Ricky Horton got up, and you're looking at Griffey and Nettles, 2 left-handed hitters scheduled in the 8th. There's a chance Horton might come in if Cox really feels badly. And he looked like he was dragging the last couple of innings. Somehow he keeps wriggling out of trouble.
Got to look at Perry over there, holding Smith on. I made a mistake in the last inning when I told you that Perry had 2 singles and a double. That shot off the center field fence, on which the Braves messed up on the bases, and Deion James was thrown out at the plate, and Andres Thomas advanced only to third. That was technically ruled a single, a 402-foot single. Technically, he takes second on the throw to the plate, which cut Deion James down. Way high and outside.
Go ahead. Throw a question at you. The little screen with Ozzie in your picture now and her at the plate. Over the long haul, which double play combination do you think? Offense, defense, base stealing. This one right here with a healthy Tommy Herr and Ozzie Smith, the way he's hitting now, or Concepcion and Morgan? That's tough, isn't it? When you look at those two and you go back in history with the offensive and defensive production, and Concepcion, I believe, he won a Gold Glove 1 year when Boa didn't. Morgan did.
I thought you were going to say Whitaker and Trammell, more contemporaries in Detroit.
Yeah, they're good, but defensively, I don't think they can compare with these two.
I'll tell you the truth, with no disrespect toward Herr and Ozzie, Joe Morgan is one of the greatest players in baseball history. In
fact, 70s, he was as good as anybody offensively all around.
In my opinion, Morgan is the most underrated great player of the last decade and a half. I mean, he was truly a phenomenal ball player in every respect. As Dal Canton visits the mound, he was a very good defensive second baseman. He hit 25 homers a year, hit around 320, a terrific base runner, hit over 300, drew an inordinate number of walks, better than 100 a year.
70s. I mean, let's face it, he got overshadowed by Bench and Perez and all the others, but as far as offense, all the things you mentioned, and he did win a Gold Glove also.
And he was a clubhouse leader, a guy who could manage if he wanted to. He was offered the Astros job before they hired Hal Lanier.
Maybe Oakland,
and he turned it down. So because of Morgan, and in Concepcion you have a good hitting shortstop who is not Ozzie's equal with the glove, but he was very good with the glove. I think the Big Red Machine has it on that argument.
All right.
3-0 now to Herr, who in '85 drove in 110 runs with 8 home runs.
I'll take this duo defensively. Best I've ever seen.
Ball strike. Then last year, Herr dipped to 252. A couple of homers. Did manage to drive in 61, which is a good figure for a middle infielder, especially on a club that was last in the league in runs scored.
He's gone.
You're right. He takes off. It's ball 4. He can slow down. Consecutive walks to Smith and Herr.
And they've got a guy that can spell Ozzie, who is, well, he could be playing regular in about a dozen teams in each league. Okendo, they need to give him a rest. He's hitting now. He's a switch hitter. He's played 7 positions. I guess Whitey has already made the comment that if they do wrap this thing up early, which he doesn't expect because he thinks the Mets are going to keep pushing him. And Cubs, if they get healthy, may make another run. Montreal could be all right. But he may pitch him and catch him in Kendall before this season's over with. Let him play off.
A strike to Clark. 0 for 3 today. Has moved ahead of Keith Hernandez in the All-Star balloting.
He is not a guest hitter. So you had a conversation in New York during a pitching change with Keith Hernandez. And what do you look for? Keith and he both agreed they just sit on fastballs. Some think Hernandez is a big guest hitter. But Clark says, now that I've closed my stance, moved off the plate, and you can hit the ball a little bit farther than the strike zone, gives you that infinitesimal split second longer to wait. He loves the ball inside part of the plate in, I believe.
Ooh. Gave him a fastball over the middle, letters high. You will not get away with that very often with Jack Clark.
You know, getting out of Candlestick has helped him because he's a natural pull hitter. He pulls even balls away. In Candlestick, you hit the ball in left field with that swirling wind, it kills balls to left. That's why Cepeda, Mays hit the ball in the right center field. They became better breaking ball hitters. Clark never did make that adjustment going to right center field.
Don't show it to him again, Jeff. He'll turn your fastball around. Foul back.
Does he ever have a bad swing? I mean, there are little punch and Judy hitters who have decent swings, but not guys that drive the bat through the strike zone as hard as he does.
It's a big lead, as you see. Both Dawson and Davis have slowed down a little bit after truly phenomenal starts. And they'll surge again, but each has hit a little dip. Dawson is hobbling a little bit with an injured Achilles tendon.
Of course, Dawson and Davis beat themselves a lot harder defensively at their positions and on the bases, especially Davis, on the artificial surface. And we saw those 2 great catches he made on Clark. He's so acrobatic. That's why Davis said to back off, now that he's hurt anyway, he could back off on stealing bases. Pete's had to make a big decision. Pete Rose, I want him to hit 50 home runs or steal 100 bases. It's hard for him to do both. Fastball, excuse me, Bob, inside off the plate, or a breaking ball that's going to be outside the plate and down. I would think ahead in the count, that's what Ozzie Virgil would like him to do to Jack Clark. Whether he can execute is a different story.
2 on, 1 out, and a 1-2 pitch coming to Jack Clark. And he got him. So Clark is 0 for 4, and he struck out twice. He did his damage last night, though, as the Cards won 9-1. He had 2 hits, 1 of them a homer, and 4 RBIs. Not today.
Ozzie Virgil decoyed inside. He slid inside, and then just before the ball was released, he popped outside.
So here's Willie McGee just trying to hit the ball for once today. That 353 mark McGee posted in '85 is the highest full season batting average ever by a switch hitter in the National League. Pete Rose hit 348 one season in winning the batting title for the Reds, but McGee went past it. Mickey Mantle hit 365 in 1957 for the Yanks. That's the highest ever by a switch hitter.
Did you have a few chuckles in Marv Albert's interview with Mickey in the pregame show?
Mickey, best described as uninhibited these days. Thought his selections as the casting director for the movie about his life were
Eddie
interesting.
Murphy?
Well, he flatters himself by saying Nick Nolte should play him. Oh, he's got Paul Williams playing Whitey Ford, Danny DeVito playing Yogi, which I admit is an inspired choice. And then they asked him who should play Billy Martin. He said Eddie Murphy. The pace of this game can best be described as languid, just like the weather in Atlanta. This one will take well over 3 hours, and we've had only 3 runs scored. A 1-1 pitch. 2-1 to Willie McGee.
The single biggest factor, I think, in the National League anyway, where they run more for the length of games. That and the switching of signs with the man on second. All the throws over. Stepping off.
Fouled away, 2-2. Let's pause briefly here for station identification on the NBC television network.
WTHR Channel 13, Indianapolis.
The story in Atlanta. The Cards with 1 in the first. Then they come up with 2 runs in the 5th. And Danny Cox is heading for his 8th victory of the year unless the Braves rally. Full count. So Ozzie from second, Tom Herr from first will be running on this next one to Willie McGee with 2 outs here in the 8th. Pendleton is on deck.
This is even close. You're going to see a hack. Breaking ball again.
Fouls it off. Did you ever strike out 4 times in a game?
Can't recall. Koufax got in one World Series game. He got the first 4 hitters 3 times each.
Including you, right?
Bobby Richardson, myself, Roger, who didn't strike out much. Like Roger struck out 60 times, I believe, his 61 home run year. Mickey, of course, went 100, but he balanced that off with 120 walks a season. But the old left-hander got us.
McGee with a defensive swing, almost fanned for the 4th time
in fact,
today.
After that Koufax record-setting strikeout game, the 4th time Mickey went up, maybe it was the 3rd, he said, coming out of the on-deck circle to Roger, he said, I don't know why I'm even taking the bat up. The rest of you guys are striking out like that. And I think that might have been the time where we got the only run off Sandy, the home run left center field by the Mets.
Dedman trying to keep it close and give his mates a chance. 3-0, top of the 8th. Runners go again, and McGee bounces one foul back of the plate. Ozzie says, hey, been too long a day. It's too hot. Don't make me do this, Willie.
And both bullpens begin to leisurely throw. It's getting about that time for Herzog with a lead, where he doesn't like to push Todd Worrell a whole lot. He's used Horton as a closer. Worrell is the big closer. He's pitching well lately after struggling a little bit early. Those power pitchers like Worrell and Righetti always seem to struggle for a few weeks in June. Once they get her in gear, they just wipe everybody out.
And he reaches for it and bloops it over Thomas's head, and he reaches up to grab it.
Dedman tried about everything to get McGee out. Finally threw a changeup, and he almost lofted it to left.
Nice play by Thomas. Cards leave 2. On the 14th of July from Oakland, 8 Eastern Time, it's the All-Star Game on NBC. John McNamara and Davey Johnson hook up again as they did in the World Series. And no one envies the job each of those skippers has, along with the league presidents, Dr. Bobby Brown and A. Bartlett Giamatti, in trying to fill out those rosters. You've got to not only consider all the deserving players in a year of outstanding performances, but there's always the issue of the fading all-time greats. Will a Reggie Jackson be added? Should they make a spot to showcase a guy like a Steve Carlton, for example, just to have them tip the cap to the crowd, maybe not even play in the game?
John McNamara has already made it known to Commissioner Peter Ueberroth that he would love to have Reggie Jackson there. Reggie's starting to hit the ball well. Of course, Mac managed Reggie. He's in Oakland.
Ricky Horton now, as Danny Cox is finished. He lasted 7. And Horton will try and protect it for him.
Horton with 7 walks, 1 intentional, 5 strikeouts. Cox with 7 walks. You wonder how the rotation is going to fall for the All-Star game. Will it be Saberhagen against Mike Scott?
Horton comes in and fans Griffey, the first man he's faced. Griffey didn't give any of the fielders a chance today. Walked 3 times, and now he's struck out.
Atlanta, today's ball game, and they made a few mistakes last night too. Almost sleepwalking through this ball game. Something they haven't done for Chuck Tanner. He's realized the injuries have just gotten him down. Some of the older players are forced to play more and play with injuries. Guys who are the bench players that can help you later on, pinch hitting or defensively. And it's really taken a toll on some of Tanner's troops.
This is the first time all day Nettles has hit without the bases loaded. He stranded 9 men, although in 2 of his 3 at-bats, he really scorched the ball. He lined to Lindemann in the first to leave him loaded. Then he flied out to left in the 3rd with 3 men on. And then he hit a bullet right at Tommy Herr, which Tommy played off his chest and threw him out to end the 5th with the bases loaded. And wouldn't you know it, there's the base hit with nobody on. Boy, it's tough when those RBI chances go a-wasting. And that's what happened to Nettles today. Here comes Whitey. Worrell is getting ready.
He's already on his way in with Virgil and Hubbard scheduled to hit now. Young kid, Trench Davis from the left side, Simmons, a switch hitter. So there's your score, 3-0. We'll be back after these messages as Worrell comes on.
As Worrell warms up, let's show you the play that typifies the Braves' frustration. Last of the fifth, 2 men on, nobody out. They trail 3-0. Gerald Perry hammers this pitch by Danny Cox over Willie McGee's head. It's off the wall on the fly. Deion James is at second. Andres Thomas at first. James held up thinking it might be caught. Thomas is almost climbing up his back. James comes home, and on an apparent double, he's cut down. McGee to Herr to Steve Lake. Perry is credited only with a single. Thomas winds up at third. Perry at second. Then Murphy struck out, and after Griffey walked, Nettles grounded out, and they got absolutely nothing out of it. Now here's Worrell. The high ERA because of some rocky appearances early in the season. He's blowing hitters away these days. Virgil fouls it off.
Basically the hard fastball. Also throws straight change and a slider. Worrell, over his last 17 relief appearances, is striking out a little over 1 of every 3 hitters he faces. Trying to show him the off-speed pitch on occasion to make the fastball look better. Some people ask where all the hard throwers are. Well, when the hard throwers come up, they convert them to relievers. Rigetti's, Tom Hankey throws hard. He's a relief pitcher now. Lee Smith. Rosen, they gave him a shot with the Phillies last year in the starting rotation after he came from Atlanta. College and high school coaches are also making pitchers, breaking ball pitchers, with those metal bats. They call their own games and force them to throw breaking stuff. They don't use their fastballs.
Virgil holds up, and the count 2-1. Nettles is at first. 1 out, bottom half of the 8th. Worrell trying to protect the 3-0 lead. Worrell's 16 saves tie him with John Franco of Cincinnati in the league rankings, which are led by Steve Bedrosian with 21, Lee Smith with 20, then Franco and Worrell with 16. There's a high fly ball, deep left center, way back, and Willie McGee! Oh, what a catch against the fence! Well, he has given us ample evidence that he wants to reclaim the Gold Glove in '87. I thought that ball was gone at first.
The ball carried about 400 feet. It was very, very high in the air, which allowed Willie to run under it. He all but braced his foot against the wall, battling his son, as you see, probably getting some verbal help from Vince Coleman. So he's made a great relay throw. Herr got the runner at home plate on his relay from center field. He's thrown behind a runner at second to get Virgil. Controversial play when the ball was dropped. And now he does this. And it seems like every time he does it, he keeps the tying run away from home plate.
Hubbard's 1 for 3. Well, if Gorman Thomas is watching this game somewhere, he's flashing back to Game 3 of the '82 World Series, when Willie climbed the fence in left center at County Stadium to take a homer from him. Cardinals got to that '82 series by beating the Braves 3 straight in the playoffs. One pitch to Hubbard, and here's a long one to left, way back. Coleman on the track, has it. Somebody in Timbuktu will pick up the paper and figure that Worrell came in and just quickly disposed of Virgil and Hubbard. Not so. They each came within a whisker of a homer. But it's been that kind of day for Atlanta. Yvonne Lendl beat Stefan Edberg, Pat Cash in straight sets over Jimmy Connors in the semis, and now they advance to the Gentlemen's Championship at Wimbledon. Join Dick Enberg and Bud Collins for breakfast at Wimbledon tomorrow morning at 9 Eastern Time for the finals here on NBC.
Will you be up in time to see that? You usually sleep in on Sundays.
I'll videotape it. And as a dutiful company employee, I'll watch all the commercials.
How do you put a premium on what he's done? No measurement what McGee's meant, even though he has struck out 3 times in this ball game. Great catch last half inning. 2 outstanding throws. You know, pitcher gets tired like Cox or like Morrell. He wasn't tired, but he obviously didn't have his great fastball. Hasselmacher on now for Atlanta. But you say, hey, keep the ball away with a little on it, and Willie's going to chase it down. Just keep the ball in the big part of the ballpark. Of course, in St. Louis, a lot more advantageous with that bigger barn where the ball doesn't carry as well as it does here. This guy's been a disappointment. He's had a big curveball with good stuff. He just hasn't been able to put things together. See if under the tutelage of Bruce Del Canton, he can smooth out his play. He had Johnny Sain, who's now a roving scout in Chicago for them, helping out in the minor leagues.
And a strike to Pendleton here in the top half of the ninth. One and one. Mentioned that the Cardinals swept the Braves in '82. The only other time the Braves won the National League West, 1969. Hank Aaron and company were swept by the Miracle Mets. This one is in foul ground and into the Cardinal bullpen. So in Atlanta, the Braves, who of course won championships in Milwaukee in the 50s, but in Atlanta, the Braves have never won a postseason game. John Morris is on deck. He'll get his first at-bat, having replaced Lindemann in right. Pendleton drills one, but Murphy is there.
Herzog already looking ahead. He's got his bullpen going. He apparently did not like the stuff of Worrell. I don't expect him to take Worrell out. Let's see, 3 for his last 3 pinch-hit appearances for Whitey Herzog. This isn't a pinch-hit appearance, but had a couple singles, home run last night. Out of the Kansas City Royals organization, he just can't find a spot to break into this lineup. He runs well. He's got a little power, although he doesn't pull the ball. He's got a good throwing arm.
He came over from KC in a deal that sent Lonnie Smith there a couple years back. And it's well hit, but it's another chance for Murphy. So Morris, who had made his lone at-bat count with a home run last night, hits it well, but is retired here.
Tuttle begins to throw. Dave Ricketts down in the bullpen catcher. What you do in a situation like this with a 24-man roster, you take that extra infielder and you kind of convert him to a catcher. Hoffman was doing that with Boston until he got sent down to Pawtucket. They're doing that with Lawless now. It's a good way to break in. You put shin guards on, the mask on occasion. You become the catcher in the bullpen, and you have a guy like Ricketts who can teach how to catch down there. You become very valuable. What it did for Clint Hurdle.
Strike to Lake, who's 0 for 2 with a walk. Clint had a great line at the beginning of the season. He is with the Cardinals. Let's see, he was with the Mets in '85, and the Cardinals won. He leaves the Mets and goes to the Cardinals in '86. The Mets win. He's back with the Mets this year, up and down between Tidewater and New York, and now the Cardinals are 6 lengths in front. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Hurdle said, look, if St. Louis wins this year, I will definitely write a book. What a sad tale it will be. Here's the 1-2. Into left field softly, and it finds a home. It bounces away from Griffey a little bit, but he recovers it. 2-out single for Steve Lake. So now Worrell gets an at-bat.
Mets aren't finished yet, though. I mean, they're struggling with their pitching a little bit. Orozco's had some trouble, as has McDowell. Davey Johnson's kept them close enough, though.
This is just Worrell's second at-bat of the season. Fouls it off.
Swings like that, they ought to pinch him. Hasselmacher with a fastball, right belt high.
Well, what happened when the Cards went into New York for 3 games earlier this week, and the Mets wound up taking 2 of 3 in a terrific series. Lead changes, outstanding plays, some bizarre plays as well. A lot to talk about in that series. What happened wasn't so much that the Mets hurt the Cards. They didn't. The Cards left town 5.5 in front. It's 1-2. But the Cards missed a chance to really push the Mets to the brink. They had won the first game, coming from behind to do it, and led Gooden 2-0 in the 7th in the second game, and might have been thinking sweep. If that had happened, the Mets wouldn't have been eliminated, but they would have left them as psychological rubble when they left Shea Stadium. Plus, they would have been 9.5 back. So the Mets at least kept their hopes alive by winning 2 of 3. There's a slow roller. Nettles knows the pitcher is running, but Worrell made it very close. Nettles really took his time about fielding that ball, thinking that Worrell wouldn't be galloping down there, and Todd made it very, very close. Last half of the 9th, and the Braves need 3. Longtime fixtures in Pittsburgh. Chuck Tanner, now the manager of the Braves. Tony Pena, now handling the catching chores in St. Louis and getting a day off today. Tanner was there for some great times with the Pittsburgh family and some very, very tough times. Team plummeted in the standings and at the gate. Pittsburgh drug trials of 1985.
Chuck's brought a lot of his people along with him. Tony Barterone, his former trainer, now he's in uniform before the ball game. He's the eye in the sky during the game. Willie Stargell over at first base. Brought him along with him. Bob Skinner, a very, very loyal person. Al Monchak, a terrific infield instructor. There's Willie. There's Monchak. He's talking to Barterome upstairs, setting defenses.
Pirates under Sid Thrift and Jim Leland showing some signs of life, an improved team. Tony Barterome, eye in the sky, and they're coming back a little bit at the gate, but the suspicion remains that Pittsburgh, a blue-collar town, is more of a football city than a baseball city, though the Pirates have a terrific baseball history and tradition. The days of Forbes Field and Mazeroski and Clemente. Ted Simmons will start it off as a pinch hitter, and he will whack one which Tommy Herr can't get to. They'll score it as a hit. So Simmons didn't go up looking. He swings at the first one. He's closing in on 2,500 lifetime hits. Herr has made plays like that before, but he couldn't that time.
Name all the players who are playing right now or coaching, and when you talk about managerial timber, that guy right there might be in the top 5 on my list. Simmons has studied the game, not just from a catcher, pitcher, hitter viewpoint, defensively. He's a very bright guy with a deadpan humor. Psychology, how to handle players. He'll make a great manager one day if he wants it.
1-1 the count to Deion James. 1 for 2 with a couple of walks. Worrell has faced 3 hitters. Virgil and Hubbard sent McGee and Coleman to the track, and Simmons hit one hard for a single. Now they count 2-1 to James.
You notice a good defensive team like the Cardinals, and they don't do it only with speed. We've made this point before. How many balls that are hit hard they either catch or come close to catching? And I think that's really because Mike Rourke with his pitchers and the coordination with Whitey Herzog, who keeps his own defensive charts. So they work together so well. It's not just throw the ball and hope a guy's in the proper position. It's try and pitch a guy a certain way, and the situations change and the pitchers change, obviously. And you try and stack your defense for the best percentages. I don't think there's anybody who does it better than Whitey.
And it tipped his bat back into the glove of Lake for the strikeout. It looked like ball 3, and it gets James' stick. Lake holds it.
Worrell found himself earlier in the year, Bob, just throwing too many fastballs down the middle. It looked like he tried to sink or run this a little bit, get the ground ball. And it looked like a sound call by Randy Marsh, the home plate umpire. He heard it rather than saw it.
So many things have gone wrong, sometimes in peculiar fashion for the Braves today. The Tanner ought to round up the videotape of this one and toss it into a public bonfire. Two 2-0.
Atlanta's lost 7 of its last 10 ball games.
And still, if somebody can reach, they'll bring the tying run to the plate, so they're not out of this one. And there you go. Ozzie can't get it. And Perry and Murphy will have a shot at it. 2 on, 1 out.
Well, Todd Worrell certainly hasn't looked like the closer that Whitey Herzog wants him to be. He hits the balls very hard off him.
Redhead, joining Whitey.
He's a guy I believe should be in baseball's Hall of Fame. Didn't have to wait that long. I mean, managerial World Championships, great second baseman, a lot of base hits.
Perry has 4 home runs. Strike 1 swinging. Murphy, who's had a very tough day, is on deck.
I noticed you did something on that last ball when you called the play-by-play that you must have learned from Jack Buck, the great Hall of Fame Cardinal broadcasters. You never call a play too soon with Ozzie out there. You learned that last night, didn't you?
That little hesitation.
Oh, man, you just...
Can they turn 2? Probably not. There's 1. Ozzie throws to third, trying to catch Simmons napping. But Ted pulls in there ahead of the throw.
They got the man up they want. Ozzie gets the force out, doesn't even look to first base. He whirls to think that he could get Ted Simmons rounding the bag. He almost surprised Terry Pendleton. Ted took no chances. They've been burned twice on the base pass already, which may have cost him a couple runs.
Ozzie's embarrassed more than one base runner in the past that way. He's smart. In addition to his startling talent, he's one of the headiest players in the game. Well, now let's discuss how the Cardinals will pitch to Murphy, who has walked, struck out twice, and grounded to third. There's Daly, who finished the game up last night. Daly, once a first-round draft choice of the Braves, had a terrific live arm, could never quite put it together. They sent him in 1984 to the Cardinals in the Ken Oberkfell deal, and he found himself with St. Louis, was a big contributor in their pennant year of '85.
Well, Daly's a guy you'd see him in the bullpen or warm up before he was going to start, and you'd say 90 miles an hour, great curveball, and Whitey Herzog and Mike Rourke finally felt, hey, this is the guy that should be a reliever. He can be a closer, he can be a middle reliever. When Tudor comes back, Whitey's staff could have 5 left-handers on him. They had a bunch of them in spring training. Here's what the fans want. It's the first really sign of emotion we've heard this today.
Ball 1 to Murphy, tied with Clark for the league leadership. 24 homers. A 25th would tie it. Worrell trying to preserve victory number 8 for Danny Cox. If the Cards get one more out here, Zane Smith, who's long since departed, will be the loser.
Runner's going.
And they're just going to let him have second base. So a small advantage to the Braves, maybe on a hopper up the middle that Murphy could beat to first. They won't be able to get the force at second.
Well, Whitey Herzog thinks so far ahead. Some think a couple of innings ahead of other managers. Now, this is the tying run in Murphy, but first base is open, and he's got Daly warming up in case they want to pitch around Murphy and bring the left-hander to pitch to Griffey. So they're going to stick with a pattern, and I'm sure Lake made aware of it. And he looks in the dugout again at Herzog. We're not going to give this guy a pitch he can hit. We're going to try not to anyway. They may stick with breaking balls off him and stay away from the fastball in the strike zone.
2-1 pitch coming.
Fastball.
And it's well hit to right center field. Morris is going to come over and make the catch. So Worrell, who wasn't terribly sharp, gets his 17th save. Danny Cox, who pitched shutout ball for 7 innings, though he was in and out of trouble, threw a lot of pitches, didn't have his sharp control, walked 7. Cox is the winner. His record is 8-3, and now The Cardinals have not lost a single game. They have led going to the 9th this year. They're 42-0 when leading after 8.
That leaves 13 on base, the Braves.
We'll be back. This week's NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game is Vince Coleman. We considered Danny Cox, who pitched shutout ball but wasn't overpowering, and Willie McGee, who was terrific defensively. This was a day when they should have burned Willie's bat and bronzed his glove. But Vince Coleman set the pace today. He was on base 3 times. He scored their first run. He drove in their second. He had a steal. You're looking at Willie McGee, but the Miller Lite Player of the Game is Vince Coleman. Miller Lite is happy to present a check for $1,000 in his name to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. We'll be back to Atlanta to wrap things up in a minute. The Braves were bucking some powerful odds trying to rally in that last half of the ninth. They still haven't won a game all year. They've trailed after 8. They're 0-34. The Cardinals have not blown a lead where they have led after 8. They're 42-0 in that category. The Major League Baseball Game of the Week has been brought to you by Miller Lite. For great taste, there's only one light beer. By the Prudential, offering a full range of insurance and other financial services. By Mr. Goodwrench. No one knows your GM car better than Mr. Goodwrench. No one. And by Valvoline Motor Oil, where motor oil is not just motor oil. Remember, this coming Friday night, a baseball special. The Astros host the Mets in a rematch of last year's National League Championship Series, and at the moment, Dwight Gooden is scheduled to pitch that game for New York. Tomorrow, it's breakfast at Wimbledon, the men's final, featuring Yvonne Lendl and Pat Cash, with Bud Collins and Dick Enberg at the microphones. That'll be followed by the United States Gymnastics Championships on NBC Sports World. 3-0 Cards over the Braves. Do it again, Willie McGee. For Tony Kubek, I'm Bob Costas. Happy 4th, everybody.